Let's get ready to rumble.
Here we go, episode 85 of the Hibs Ramble. Hibs aren't here, but we are this week. We're back. It's me, Craig, joined with Liam, Ryan and Sean. How we doing, boys? We all good?
Very well, thanks.
All good, mate. All good.
Fantastic.
We've been looking forward to this one. We've got former Hibs captain, part of the Scottish Cup winning squad, Kevin Thomson, with us. Kevin, how are you doing, mate?
All good, thanks, lads. Thanks for having me on.
Good. So we're just going to go through a bit of a chat with Kevin, covering his career at Hibs, away from Hibs, and I maybe put a few wrongs right throughout the podcast. So I'll just start off, Kev, with the first one. Can you tell us what your first footballing memory was?
Probably quite a big one, to be fair. Probably going back to like Skull Cup 91. It was not just because we're obviously on a Hibby podcast, but I would have been 5 or 6, I think, then when I went on the People's Bus for the Green Tree to Skull Cup 91, and obviously the iconic strip, as you'll obviously be aware, even though some of you wouldn't have been born. Liam, you wouldn't have been born
No,
then,
I
were
wasn't
you?
born. I was but a twinkle in my mum's eye.
So actually quite a special memory of the fact that obviously then when 2016 come around, I obviously stood at Hampden with my dad and close friends, obviously people was watching the team win 91 and then go back to Easter Road to wait for the team bus to come, to be in a surreal position, albeit no stripped, but in the matchday squad at Hampden 2016 obviously, and then get to go over to obviously when the bedlam obviously happened and everybody ended up on the pitch. I knew where the kids obviously were with my father-in-law at the time and my dad, so I managed to obviously squeeze in next to the crowd and kind of listen to Sunshine and Leaf with them. So I'm not so sure many can have as good a memory as that.
No, definitely not. So leading on for that then, what would be your first football kit? Might not necessarily be a Hibs kit, but what's the first kit you remember getting?
I used to always get Man United kit when I was a kid, but I don't know if that would have been the first. I'm just thinking that like maybe mum and dad might not have been able to afford Man United kit, so I was a People's Thistle boy. That was my kind of first kind of boys club when I think because I was not too bad when I was a kid. Obviously, I was maybe a wee bit more advanced than some of the other kids in the borders. When I used to play for People's Thistle, I want to say I was like maybe 6 or 7, and the rest of the kids were like maybe 9 and 10. So People's Thistle, whatever used to play in red and white, but it would be a vague memory really if it was an actual like team strip. Obviously, I got pictures when I was a nipper that mum and dad used to obviously buy me the Hibby ones. I wish I still had for my kids the Adidas white one, because I've got a couple of nice pictures of me and my sister on holiday, and obviously a nice wee tan, the kind of blonde hair, and obviously I had that Adidas strip with the white and obviously the green arm. So I'm not so sure I had the green one, but I definitely had the white one. So probably the type of strips were the first, but obviously apart from the Hibs, my English team when I was a kid growing up was kind of Man United, so I used to always try to fight to get the Man United strip if I could. But nowadays my kids get a strip every other month. I think I used to get one every 2 seasons.
I think us as parents, well, me and well, maybe not Liam so much because he's just got wee nippers, but it's everything these days. Madrid, PSG, Milan, the whole lot. Who was your first footballing idol, Kev?
I think from Man United era, I love Roy Keane still to this day, but obviously when I was a nipper, I had a real soft spot for lefties, obviously. So Ryan Giggs and kind of Lee Sharp, where Giggs was just kind of breaking on the scene for Man United, and Lee Sharp was obviously another lefty, and they used to do this daft celebration where they used to like kind of like waltz away from each other. So I used to always have a soft spot for them, but my dad used to always tell me, never mind all the type of players, just watch Mark Hughes, obviously striker, top player in that Man United era. So I suppose Man United was always the one that I gravitated to when I was a Hibby, obviously starting to understand players. I used to have a soft spot for Jim Leighton. I used to always get a goalkeeper strip if I could get one. I had the Scotland one that was the multicoloured one. Darren Jackson, I went through a wee spell where I used to like him. I went through a wee spell like I like it. I'm saying I liked them as if like I didn't know, stop liking them, but I went through a wee spell where I liked Darren Jackson. I went through a wee spell where I liked Keith Wright. Keith was one of my kind of favourites when I was a bit younger, and I was lucky. A wee story for you is that when Alex Muller was the Hibs manager, he was one of the first managers to create a school of excellence, and they used to do it at Easter Road, and obviously there was all the old stadium, the old terrace and old main stand. and I was the youngest player to get invited to it. And the first night that I went to Easter Road, it was still I want to say it might have been mitre kit, you know, but it was literally, I'm going like that, like that's how big it was on me. It drowned me, obviously, and Alex Miller done like a kind of technical type session, which all the kids were like twice the size of me, and Keith was the first team player at the time there to do all the demos. So Alex Miller would get him how he received it, how he changed his body shape, how he'd dribble away, how he'd then get his head up, how he'd go and pass, and all the detail and all the demos. Well, the detail come off of Alex Miller and the demos come off of Keith. So it gave me like I better not tell Ted this because I'll see him obviously doing his mains all the time, so hopefully he doesn't listen to this. Or Darren Jackson or Kevin Harper. But they were probably the ones that when I was younger I used to like. I like people that made a difference in games, like a lot of kids, the people that score the goals and can maybe be match winners or whatever. It's amazing how like these strikers without doing them a disservice when they get their name on the score sheet and end up getting the 3 points, how valuable they are. But everybody else has maybe had better games or been more a kind of standout or whatever. But they were the ones when I was younger I kind of gravitated towards.
Who's obviously you were sort of slap bang in the middle of the park. Who's one player that, because I'm sure you played against, we could probably sit here all night and try and reel off some of the names that you played against, but is there one that stands out that you didn't play against that you would have loved to have came up against, whether it be kind of their prime or maybe even somebody that wasn't playing when you were playing, just even somebody these days? Is there somebody that you would look at and go, quite fancy going toe to toe with them?
I was, when I think of obviously, like I'm lucky enough to play against Messi's and Iniesta, Xavi's, Henry, Ronaldinho's, like you name it. Kind of lucky enough to Ibrahimovic when I played national team against Sweden. So the kind of main superstars, I suppose, I was lucky to play against in that kind of era. I never got a chance to play against Ronaldo. So I'd left Rangers to go to Middlesbrough when Rangers got Man United the following season in Champions League, which obviously Ronaldo was still there, Rooney as well. So I never got a chance to play against them. But I think domestically, when I was a young Hibs player, and you're obviously starting to have a dream when you start to get close to the first team, and Rangers had the era where they had like your Gattusos in that. I used to always think I'd like a wee ding dong with Gattuso in the middle of the pitch. He was always one that I thought, and obviously went on and had an amazing career, nationally and obviously, not domestically, but obviously European with AC Milan, etc. So he was one that obviously just because he was tough and aggressive, I always thought I'd quite like a wee ding dong with him. But worldwide, you could, as you say, we could probably waste all night speaking about how many brilliant players there was and how much it would have been a privilege to have a wee go at them and share a pitch with them, obviously.
Just dropping Xavi and Iniesta in there like it's nothing, eh? Love that. So on the flip side, who's one player that you would have loved to have played with, whether it be feeding balls through to a striker or maybe a general in the middle of the park beside you? Is there one that you look at and you think, oh, you would have just loved to have had 90 minutes on the park with him?
Domestically or just in general?
Just in general.
Obviously, I built up a good relationship with him when I was at Rangers coaching. Obviously, when Stephen was the manager, and I know obviously some Hibbies didn't like him, but he was brilliant for me as a young coach, really, and obviously somebody that wanted to go and flourish as a manager, and his door was always open for me. So I think how Stephen played in his pomp, the kind of box to box midfielder. You could argue like when Scotty obviously first come on the scene, he obviously played more advanced and a bit more aggressive and obviously driving the team up the pitch, if you know what I mean. And probably as he started to mature, he kind of played behind the ball a lot, do you know what I mean? But I think Stephen, the way I played, kind of sitting behind people and kind of being the one at the kind of base of midfield rather than at the front of it, I think he would have been quite good for me as a kind of partner. I think I'd probably do a lot of his dirty work going back the way and maybe feeding them balls into good areas that he could obviously go and do his thing. So that's just off the cuff, I suppose. But I've always I had a real soft spot for Eden Hazard when he went through that unbelievable spell at Chelsea where he was unplayable for 2 or 3 years, and I kind of thought I wouldn't mind sitting just in behind him and just feeding him balls and letting him go and do his thing, and obviously a dribbler, a match changer, which obviously I wasn't, thinking that obviously when the ball turned over I'd be there to try and win it back from him and feed him again. So I suppose there's that many exciting players in there that we've been privileged to watch across the world that I suppose us being kind of Scottish football fans, we sometimes then get to see the best players in the world, do we? So sometimes you just get to watch them on the box, but they would be ones that would stick out in my mind for me.
So who would have taken the number 8 at Hibs then if Hibs had signed Steven Gerrard? Who's the number 8, you or him?
I think we all had to get the road for Stevie, to be fair. I'm not so sure any of us could get near him. I got lucky to play against him when I was through at Ibrox, and we played pre-season friendly, and obviously come up against him a wee bit. And he was just so powerful and so aggressive, man. He was, and people didn't think he's that big. Like, I'm just a small lad, like, but I'd like to think it didn't make any difference the way I played. But when you stood next to him, it's like he was a big imposing lad, like. So that was the one thing when you sometimes played, like, and you could throw that down the drain, I suppose, when you think of Messi's, Iniestas, Xavi's, because they were quite small. But when you think of Henry's and Ibrahimovic's, and I'm talking like, they were like man mountain players, like, just so strong and powerful, just sheer athletes. And Stephen was probably a wee bit like that as well.
I think that's one thing we noticed when Hibs played Aston Villa, actually, was
So powerful.
we spoke about it on the podcast after the home game. Ollie Watkins, like, you see them on the telly and they just look like a wee, he's just like a normal, and then you see him actually in person, he's actually built, like, the boy was massive.
It's like John's even. We went down to Villa for a couple of days for my pro licence and got to obviously watch training. I had some breakfast with Stephen, and then we got some lunch with John. And actually, John sat with us for like 2 or 3 hours after training. And obviously, you're then seeing the boys in the flesh. And I'd like to think if I maybe never had injuries, I could easily played at that type of level. I feel as though like I kind of underachieved for my talent, to be honest. But listen, that's another kind of story. But that's just me having a wee personal humpy, kind of feeling like I never achieved what I should have achieved through maybe a wee bit of adversity and a bit of bad luck. But when you stand and watch these players come in, and you watch them go for lunch, and you've obviously retired for however long, 6 or 7 years, so I ain't got no muscle or no power or no athleticism anymore, and you're looking at them thinking, wow, they're like so big and strong. And obviously John, to be fair, was a powerful boy when he played for the Hibs, but I would say he's obviously naturally, he's progressed, he's developed, he's got even better, but he's definitely got stronger and more powerful, man. His legs are like people's waists.
I'm not even mentioning his backside either.
No, I'm trying to do him a compliment talking about his legs rather than his arse.
Right, just a few this or that's, and then we'll move on to Ryan. So the first one is Sunshine on Leith or Simply the Best.
Sunshine and Leaf, aye, easy. That's another. It's hard because I had a brilliant time through Ibrox, and I love the song. And it's great when you win trophies and it goes on in the bus, and that is iconic. And I'll never ever get away from that. I think I've always been quite fair and quite hopefully humble and respectful in what I say. But it's when you get brought up. And by the way, I've sat in front of 400, 500, 600 Rangers fans at supporters clubs and told them that I'm born a Hibby and I'll always be a Hibby. My kids are season ticket holders, and they've never ever batted an eyelid at it. So I'm not so sure any of them will be too disappointed saying that Sunshine at Leaf's one of my. By the way, it goes further than the Highbees for me. It's iconic in it worldwide, really.
No, you're spot on. This goes back to sort of when you were a youth player, and the story that you and Scott Brown used to have a flat in town. So, City or Cav?
It was just it was about 500 yard walk for City nightclub, which wasn't too good for two young lads.
Wasn't he too good? We'll keep that for the.
Well, it wasn't good for. It was all right when Bobby was the manager because he let us go out every night of the week. But when Tony became the manager, it was a bit. It was a wee bit of a different ball game when it came to professionalism. So Bobby was great with us. To be fair, I still speak to him now. He still sends me all the mad WhatsApp messages that you're scared to open in case they make any funny noises. He's brilliant, Bob. And obviously I still speak to Tony. To be fair, whenever I went for jobs or that, I've always asked Tony for advice. So. He's we probably never had quite the relationship that we would have liked in the kind of tail end of Middlesbrough because injuries and chairman and fans were probably on my back. But Tony for what a guy, what a coach, and more importantly, a brilliant manager, but a brilliant person.
So that probably answers the next one. Then Tony Mowbray or Alan Stubbs?
Tony all day. And I've nothing against Stubbsy, and I get he obviously won the day in May and that, but and he was good with me, to be fair, as an older player. I was going to retire, obviously, when I left Dundee. That was I'd had enough. I kept on getting calf injuries and travelling an hour and a half up to Dundee. And by the brilliant club, treated me great. The people behind the scenes, brilliant. And I'd like to think I've always been that type of player that gets on. And hence why I like to think I'm welcome back at most clubs because you're humble and respectful to the staff within the building. But I just found it really challenging getting up first thing in the morning and sitting in the car for an hour and a half and training on public pitches and sodding wet and jumping on a minibus to get to training and constantly being injured and driving all the way up there to get like half-hourly treatment and then get lunch and drive all the way down the road. So when the call come for Stubbsy to meet him for a coffee to see, it was actually through the physio that she had said, listen, are you leaving Dundee? And I was like, I said, that travelled quick and it happened really quickly. I was like, I'm due to leave pretty much the day, maybe tomorrow it'll all be finalised. And she was like, oh, would you come back here? And I was like, of course I would. I was like, how's that a possibility? And she was like, well, the manager had mentioned that they got wind that you might be leaving. And I was like, well, I said, get him to phone me. So he phoned me, obviously, a day or two after I'd left Dundee, met him for a coffee, and then literally the next game day I went into training and obviously got an opportunity to sign. And it probably was, even though Ross County was a huge disappointment for me personally, because it was like the cup that I wanted to get my hands on, that winners medal for the club, and obviously come up short. Plus I gave the ball away for the first goal, then we got ourselves back into it. To be fair, we absolutely battered Ross County, but what does it matter? You get beat. Obviously Fonts makes a mistake later on, and ball ends up in the back of the net, and before you know it, you've got your hands on another losers medal and another disappointment set of Hibs travelling all the way back to the town, and or we were all over wherever they've travelled for. So the bonus for me was playing in the derbies, being part of the Scottish Cup, playing in the Inverness game. I think I played 2 or 3 games in the Championship, and I played maybe 8 or 9 games and sat on the bench near enough every other game, apart from the cup final or whatever, or maybe the last few games before that as well, the playoff games. And it probably was more than I had any expectation of. So I could say it was a bonus for me, but at the same time, the way we are made is once you get an opportunity and you're in the training centre, you're training every day, you naturally want to play. So, but no, listen, full respect for Stubbsy, but Tony's a different animal.
And I'll give it the last one before I hand over to Ryan. Bees or bears?
Beans or bears?
With bees, so high bees or bears?
Oh, high bees or bears? That's a tricky one, eh? Listen, I'm a hibby. I've just told you that. It's I don't like either if it was like bees or bears. Like I thought you meant bees as in like bumblebees and then bears as in like gummy bears, eh? I was like, give me a bit of chocolate all day, eh?
Craig butchered that one, to be fair.
That didn't go. You have it in your head how it's going to play out, and it didn't play out that way. But yeah, Ryan, over to you, mate.
You've actually covered and touched on quite a few of the points I was going to speak about, being early influences and what have you. But I'll probably just go straight on to your time at Hutchie Vale. That obviously came about. And Hutchie Vale, basically a conveyor belt for talent during that period of time where you were there. Were you aware of the interest, especially from down south, at an early period, or did it come about a wee bit later on?
Sorry, my dog was just having so we obviously, I've got 2 kids that are now involved in Pro Academy, so just to give you an insight in how what it looked like for maybe similar to your eras, really, when you played when you were younger. Hutchie obviously boys club, Pro Academies just had like selected type games. The big academies, the big training centres never really existed when we were kids. So it was the old cliche when the scouts used to wear the big stupid navy jackets and the umbrellas, and everybody kind of knew what scouts, and obviously they become recognisable. Whispers would go around, that's the so-and-so scout, that's the so-and-so scout. So you were probably aware of it. Now I was probably a bit similar to my oldest boy in physical development. I'd like to think I was quite talented, and I was always one of the stronger in the group. But the age band changed when I was under 12s or 13, and it then meant boys like Whitty. When I went from under 12s to 13s, your Whitties, your Darren Fletchers, all that era got to stay and play under 13 again or under 12, whichever year it was. So I went from being like the kind of main man and physically kind of equal with everybody to all of a sudden the bulk of the best players come from staying and playing the same age band again, if that makes sense. So the best players were effectively like the year above me, and all of a sudden I had to then start playing with the best players, albeit I was maybe one of the better players in that age band, let's say under 12s, but when I went on the under 13s, instead of me going with the rest that I was maybe already a bit better than, I then had like a Whitty who obviously got to then play under 13 or under 12 2 years in a bounce. That's when my relationship built with Whitty, really. So we played whatever it was, under 12s or 13s, Hutch all the way through. So I think you're aware when you're a kid, obviously, because mums and dads talk, and probably a bit similar to myself. My dad was tough on me when it came to application and hard work and, you know, trying to get stuck in and no wasting my time travelling all the way up from Peebles to Edinburgh, not to try my best, really. And I've got no problem, and I'm sure my kids will vouch for me. I couldn't care if they make mistakes or give the ball away or trip over the ball or make a bad pass or go through one-on-one with the goalie and miss a chance, or get caught on the ball and give the ball away, and the ball ends up in the back of the net. 'Cause my youngest one's a defender, you see, so 7-a-side, you give the ball away, turns over at that age, at that level, can end up in the back of the net, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, but I've got a real bugbear when it comes to effort and hard work, and it's what I believe in, it's what I live my life by, and I'll no change for anyone. Gareth Evans obviously runs the academy, knows the way I am. I've got no problem with mistakes, but I suppose it was a wee bit different for us. No being involved in like the big academies, and Hutchie was what you could call the kind of be all and end all. So, and then got the opportunity to obviously go and play maybe a bounce game for Hibs, a bounce game for Rangers, a bounce game for Celtic. I'm not so sure I ever got an opportunity to play for the Jambos, but and then obviously the teams down south, etc., started to kind of float around as well. So I went down to Newcastle when I was a kid, and obviously then Coventry started to having I don't know if you call it like an affiliation or an attachment to obviously Hutchie Vale, because there was a period that we played in Coventry strips minus the kind of badge on the front. I don't know if that was an age band, like if it was maybe a drinks label or whatever. We played in Coventry strips, which was the sky blue, the kind of baby blue, and the kind of white stripes for a period of time, and that obviously then allowed players to go down to Coventry. So that was kind of my kind of path when I was a kid.
And obviously with the move to Coventry, there'd have been loads of other interested parties, I would imagine, but was there any word of a future pathway, or was it better for your development to go there as opposed to maybe staying up here?
Well, as loads of interested parties, there wasn't loads of interested parties, loads of sniffs and loads of things, but Coventry offered me an astronomical contract for a 16-year-old, which I ended up terminating. Obviously, only a few months into it with the issues that I had. But the main man at Coventry at the time was a guy called Richard Money, who went on to manage at like teams like Swindon and Walsall and that. But he was an academy director at the time, and he come up as the main man to kind of watch the young Hutchie players. Obviously, I was probably one of the. I'm saying that last. There was a good few kids before me had been invited down to Coventry before I got an opportunity to go down. And I played one time. Obviously, Hutchie used to have their games where Scotty stays now over at the Banter, the old Crammon campus where Hibs, Alex McLeish's Hibs used to do their pre-season. That was my first pre-season actually with Hibs at Crammon. We used to use the Dunfermline. I think it was called Dunfermline College. I don't know why Dunfermline, but you'll know what I mean over at kind of Granton kind of area, or Crammond area, sorry. And Richard come up to obviously watch that young Hutchie team, and he said to the scouts straight away, like, well, the wee blonde boy on the left wing that I used to play when I was a kid, he's the one. So then I started to get opportunities to go down, and honestly I got treated like a king down there. But to Hibs and the teams all domestically, I never had loads of opportunities. Like I had opportunities, and maybe I never done well, or I never caught the eye, but I definitely never got offered a contract. And I would like to think the contract that I got offered at Coventry outweighed quite substantially. I'm quite open. I'm quite happy to tell you that when I signed for Hibs when I was a YTS, I think I signed my first contract was £100 a week. Well, it was like 5, 6, 7, 8 times that when I got offered to sign for Coventry. So to give that up to then go to the Hibs was like, it wasn't as if I was a sought after talent that they were bending over backwards to try and sign me, if you know what I mean. I got a phone call out of the blue. Dad got a phone call to ask if I fancied going in for a couple of days. George Mackey was under 18s coach at Coventry, who was really tight with Donald Park at the time. And obviously Park, everybody loves the bits. And my dad said, "Listen, I'll take a couple of days off work if you want to go in." I'm like, "I'll go in. I'd love to go in," because I knew obviously the Hutchie boys, your Whitties, your Fraser Ogle, a lot of the Hutchie boys had obviously signed for the Hibs. So I actually felt like going back to boys club. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. We trained at Wardy. I helped set up the goals, pissing down the rain, freezing, covered in mud, and we started training, and within, I think, 15, 20 minutes of like doing part of the warm-up, a technical warm-up, that went into like a possession-y type based thing. And I just remember Parky being really angry, so aggressive, and I'm like, wow, this guy's angry. Obviously, not knowing who he was at the time, I just knew him as Donald Park. And he come to me just as obviously we got a water break after, say, 15, 20 minutes, and he was like, "You all right?" And I was like, "Aye, good, thanks." And he was like, "How do you find it?" I was like, "Aye, good." He was like, "When do you want to sign?" And I was like, "This is the day if you want." And he was like, "You're already better than what we've got." He says, "You can sign when you want." And that was me. I felt top of the world. So I went to water and joined in training. I went in again the next day, but we were leading into the end of the season. So there wasn't any games, and the kind of young YTSs were just supplementing the first team at the time. So had the summer break, signed, and then had the summer break, and then started back pre-season, and I suppose the rest is history.
The rest is history. I suppose with a lot of guys your age making the breakthrough into the first team, that would have given you further incentive to go further, and seeing that pathway into the first team would have helped you massively, which then follows into the season where you make your breakthrough under Bobby Williamson.
I suppose you never feel it's going to happen for you when you're a young player. You just never know when it's going to come. And I remember it like it was yesterday when the senior players had said to me up at Dundee, we were sitting in, I think, the Double Hedges Hilton up in Dundee having pre-match. And obviously, when you're a young player, you get a lot of the gags, and you get a lot of the older players taking the piss at you and that, and might tell you to go and have a long stand in the corner or whatever. And naive young players might end up doing it. And the players had said, "Oh, the gaffer wants to see you in reception." And I'm like, I was too cool for school, thinking I'm not doing that. And serious, the gaffer wants to see you. So I went through to see Bobby, who I had hardly, apart from training, I had never really had any conversations with the manager. I was there or thereabouts. I made the squad, but back then it was always 16 men in the squad, like 5 subs, obviously. And obviously, same again, if you probably made 1 or 2 subs back then, it was you were lucky to get off the bench, if you know what I mean. So we're now almost a given, isn't it? The 5 subs, and it's like every team plays 5 subs almost every week. Which I suppose is good, like, for opportunity. But back then, you could argue it was maybe a wee bit tougher for us with 20-man squads now, only 16 then. Anyway, he said to me, "How are you feeling?" And I was like, I said, "Fine." He said, "I'm going to give you your debut today." And I was like, it was so, no unexpected, but Brebs had been ill. So there was like a wee whisper, but I genuinely thought there would be somebody else, because you go for 17th, 18th man to then starting in the team. You then wonder what the 4 or 5 subs every week were doing, if you know what I mean. It's like almost getting called into the national team, isn't it? When you're knowing the squad, you get called in, and then all of a sudden you start. It's like,
Absolutely.
But it does happen, obviously, and luckily for me, that time it was right place at the right time. And I say it to everybody when I speak to a lot of the parents when I'm at East Mains, thinking about luck. And I like to think your talent gets you there eventually. But Craig Burley got sent off with a bad tackle on Tam McManus after 10 minutes at Tens. And we actually went 1-0 down, and then Deke scored. I must have a good memory. Still remember scoring a free kick at Dens. But anyway, I'd phoned my dad to say, "Listen, I'm going to play." So they shot for Peebles, my dad and his best mate, Big Hibby, straight to Dens. He was like, "You get us 2 tickets." I was like, "I'll get you 2 tickets, Nate boss." I had to scramble to get 2 tickets, because I'd never normally need them. Because obviously, they'd always be swapped up by somebody else. And then Craig Burley getting sent off, I started left midfield at the time. And Nid was in the middle of the pitch, I think, with Grant Brebner. Didn't quote me on that. Deeks must have started up front, I'm presuming. I'd need to go and obviously look at the team lines, but I can vaguely remember. And then after 10-15 minutes, because we obviously then had 11 men v10, Bobby moved me into centre mid. I don't know if he reshuffled and Nid went to the left or whatever, but as I say it, like it's like it felt like yesterday. I got more touches of the ball in my debut than I probably did for the next 10 games. Like I literally, playing against 10 men for 80 minutes, it was, albeit we got a disappointing result because we only drew 1-1, but the team, I think, maybe finished bottom 6 that season anyway, so it wasn't as if we were a flying Hibs at the time. But I remember Deke scoring the free kick anyway, but I just always remember finishing that game, and my dad said, sometimes you need a bit of luck in your life, and him getting sent off after 10 minutes, with it being like 100 mile per hour, and know that having that much involvement, and then blink of the eye, really, he gets sent off, I get loads of the ball. So it probably gave me a good opportunity to try and shine and get an early kind of foothold, and people trying to, well, I suppose people making an opinion on you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it gave you a good opportunity to showcase what you could bring to this side. And you must have done that, because you went on to make 23 appearances that season, which is quite a lot for somebody that's just breaking into the team. There was a mixture of success and probably tough periods in that season. We finished in the bottom 6, but we also got to cup final. But the semi-finals, what we want to talk about just now, when we beat Rangers on penalties.
Special night. I've got the where I'm sitting in the house. Obviously, I've got my garages. I've got a wee games room. It's my wee kind of man cave type thing. So rather than being in the house and driving the missus wild, I've got like kind of wee pool table and my kind of memorabilia about that. The picture of the boys celebrating when obviously the winning penalty goes in. Actually, it wasn't a winning penalty, was it? It was De Boer missed, I'm sure, which was the final penalty.
Colin Murdoch scored the last one for Hibs too.
But Mateus Dumby even took a penalty that night. It shows you how far I was doing the pecking order. But even Scott, I still laughed at Scotty's now. It was like Scotty's, well, it was a bad penalty. It goes in the net. It's a great penalty, but it was the worst penalty ever, man. He trickled over the line. Still managed to score, but fair play to him, because it's taking penalties for me wasn't in my makeup really. It just wasn't something that floated my boat. But it was funny because I don't know if you've seen it before, but that night I got booked, obviously, with Kenny Mo Ross elbowed me in the face. I've still never forgiven him. And Kenny burst my lip, and it made us have a kind of wee handbags, really, but coming together. It was a free kick. The ball broke loose. I had stopped. He kind of come across me, gave me one in the face. And I've kind of reacted a wee bit, and we've got the wee handbags, a wee tussle, really. And we ended up getting booked, both of us getting booked. But because Hibs, we had started in the round before Rangers, because obviously we weren't in Europe, so you play that extra game, we were allowed 3 yellow cards. Obviously, if we'd started the round after, you were only allowed 2. So I actually finished the game and gave my all, obviously, wanting to get sent off, wanting to put my body on the line to sacrifice your first National Cup final, especially as a Hibby, which was a dream kind of come true. To sit in the changing room afterwards when kind of the elation and the excitement of winning on penalties, thinking I was going to miss the cup final. And it wasn't until a couple of days after that the club got confirmation to say that we were allowed 3 yellow cards and no 2. So I was obviously allowed to play. Maybe looking back, I maybe should have missed it.
It would have been a great relief knowing that you could have made the cup final, but that was a disappointing time for every Hibs fan, and probably for Craig, Sean and myself. Liam, I don't know if you have got fond memories or whatever of that period of time, but how did you feel as a team after that? Did you feel like you were ready to go again and go further, or do you think it knocked the stuffing out of you?
I suppose it builds a bit. You want to win, I suppose, but I always think setbacks, injuries, losing cup finals, like losing big semi-finals, like the Dundee United one. I don't know if that was the next
All in year,
season.
aye.
The first one was a sore one, and I remember it. And being 1-0 up, I just come back for injury. Come on at, I want to say I maybe come on at half time. I come on early. I never started that game. I'm sure. I think I come on. And obviously Dundee United brought on Jason Scotland and the boy Samuel, and they gave us a right torrid, to be fair. I ended up getting beat 2-1. So
Yeah.
I think, even though it sounds a bit naive and a bit stupid, I didn't mean it in that way. Hopefully you obviously the views on understand, obviously, and people that are listening, that's the setbacks probably do build resilience and do build your character and your personality. Listen, it'd be brilliant to win every single game, wouldn't it? But genuinely never happened. So I think that one for that young group of players was a real sore one, because we'd kind of all come through together. The camaraderie, the togetherness, the will to win for each other and work hard for each other was like second to none, really.
Yeah.
It very rarely happens, does it? So it was a unique environment where 6 or 7 players go for youth team changing room, straight into the first team changing room, and all start to kind of grow a profile and a reputation for themselves, and more so probably the way we played football.
Yeah.
Quite exciting and quite fast flowing and quite attacking, and everybody was kind of like, it was a vibrant time as such, to say. I don't say that there can't be other times, and there's no other times that people would enjoy it more, but it was certainly quite an exciting, young, fully energy team. So to lose that, I cannot tell you how gutted the boys were. Like it was like a dart to the a dagger to the heart, really. And you have to kind of be humble and respectful, how I've always lived my life, to try and take it on the chin and congratulate Livingston and watch them get the trophy, and just wish it had been you, and how different it would have been going back to Edinburgh with whatever it was, 39,000 Hibbies at Hampden. It's what dreams are made of, really. And then you let everybody down, you let yourself down, your family. It's like, I think people think players didn't care, but it takes a long time to get over getting beaten in a cup final. And I think more so for a team that you grew up supporting, because you take it probably that wee bit extra to heart. It doesn't mean the player that doesn't support Hibs doesn't care, of course they do, but it certainly hurts that wee bit more when you kind of grow up supporting a team.
Kevin, just on that game, sorry Ryan, what was the dressing room like before it? Because obviously we'd beat such a big, dominant Rangers side in the semi-final with such a young, flamboyant side. And then obviously we've got so much confidence going into that game, albeit up against the Livingston side who came out on top. A couple of questions just on that. Obviously, what was the dressing room like and the morale within the squad going into it, up against the Livingston side, considering the amount of quality we had on that side? But looking back, I've heard you speak loads and loads of times in interviews about squads needing strong personalities and needing strong characters in the dressing room. After that game as well, who were the strong characters that were able to pick you all up? Was it some of the older heads or was it some of the younger boys?
It was probably a bit of both, to be honest. I suppose that's why I think that's why that crop built quite a lot of resilience quite early on. Listen, when Tony made me the captain, I think I was 2021 or something. I was at that stage. I was one of the youngest club captains of the club's history, I think, at the time. I don't think there'd been one younger. So you think back to like maybe only playing 50, 60, 70 games, some of these players, and all of a sudden you're the club captain, and like you've got guys that are 32, 33 in the changing room that have maybe been playing like for 15, 16, 17 years, but they guys probably looked up to us. It's just the way it was, and it wasn't in a big-headed way, just our talent, I suppose, would have gave us a kind of leadership quality, if that's the right way to say it. But what I would say about that team is I genuinely believed that it could beat anyone. I just think the naivety, the actual players' development at that current time, and the squad that we had at that current time was just not good enough to consistently beat any team. It's just the way we were as young players. By the way, we beat that Livingston team, I think 6-0 at Easter Road 3 or 4 weeks later. And I'd actually seen the archive just on Twitter, maybe it must have just been a week or two ago. I think it was obviously, it must be is it maybe an anniversary for Livingston or something? It must have been Livingston or the SPFL that tweeted it. And obviously it's like, or one of my mates sent it to me, I think it was, but it was on Twitter. And Scottish Chance, and obviously he's one of my best mates, and that's what football is really. And obviously, like I see Big Marvin when I go back to Ibrox at times because he does the lounges, and we'll obviously have a wee bit of banter. And I think people forget that Livingston team were actually quite a lot of big hitters within it. Your Lee Makels, your Marvin Andrews, Fernandez obviously ended up going on and playing for Celtic. Like they did actually have good calibre players. Stuart Lovell, obviously, do you know what I mean? Another one, Harden Pro. They actually did have like quite a. It wouldn't surprise me if Livingston had a bigger budget than Hibs at the time. Which, what does that mean? I'm just throwing something out the thing with it, but it was no as if like just because we were Hibs, it should have been a given. I think that's what people thought because of the journey that we had to the final. That these boys can go and compete with Rangers and they can play off the cuff and they're exciting and they've got so many young talented players that they're just going to go and turn up and blow people away. But it's definitely not the messages that come from the management or our mindset. Our mindset was we could turn up and win, but I think when you look back at the actual starting lineup. And just that team or that era as a whole, we were probably, and I love Mr. Peter to bits, we go back a long, long time, but we were probably a wee bit investment, maybe a good goalkeeper, and not taking nothing away from Dan Anderson, because he was probably the best of that time when I played at the Hibs. Obviously, Nick Colgan had moved on with the kind of big wages or whatever, but the goalie, Zibby Miowski, obviously, I love Zibs to bits, but he obviously made a few blunders in his time. And we were probably never blessed with having a real strong number one, if you know what I mean. And then probably like that centre half position, that like going and floating the boat to like maybe bring in a really experienced centre back and maybe I'm thinking of a Craig Brewster type that would like have helped the young players up front that people could have bounced off. We probably were crying out for something like that, but we found ourselves in a position quite quickly that the young players kind of stole the mantle, and we were probably having to look at ourselves in the mirror for experience, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're then served with a bit of a personal body blow with the injury that you get. It's obviously went on to hamper your career ever since, really. And the team actually go on to do really well in the following season. And unfortunately, you have to miss a big chunk of that, to be honest. That must have been a really hard time for you to kind of stay focused and on your rehabilitation and getting back into that team, despite them doing well.
It was I'll let you get the violin. Yeah. Think back to the disappointments that you had, but it goes back to that disappointment part and building resilience and probably the person that I am now and the next big injury that come along, probably having that resilience to know that I can bounce back once, I can do it again. And obviously then I broke my leg at Middlesbrough as well, so it's like you feel as though like if you probably, I used to say, my dad never so much, I suppose. He was probably a wee bit more harder than what my mum was. But my mum used to always say to me, if it wasn't for bad luck, son, you would have none. But I never used to feel like that. You just naturally feel down in the dumps at times and you want to be playing and you want to showcase your talent and you want a bit of what everybody else is getting, I suppose, and that thrill and that buzzy, turning up on a Saturday and getting to play for your team and feel like you're earning your wages, really, do you know what I mean? And you try and build up your profile and challenge yourself against the so-called best players. That was the kind of driver for the young players. So when that was taken away, obviously Wednesday night at Easter Road against Partick Thistle, it was a sore one in the stomach. But I always feel it's hard. Like I'd rather other people judge you, really. Like when I hear the boys of that era kind of talking about you or different people fans, and listen, I understand. I'm not naive. I understand some Hibs fans that find it really difficult, the Rangers relationship. I've got no problem with that. I wouldn't ask them to change their mind. I would just ask them to treat me. I'm not anyone that thinks I'm big-headed. I'm not anyone that thinks I'm better than anyone else. I lived the dream, really. I was a young boy for Peebles that worked hard and had a bit of talent, but I certainly sit here now as soon to be 40 in October, thinking that I could have been a far better player than I was if I never had so much bad luck with injury.
That's the unfortunate thing about football. You don't know what's round the corner, and probably been many a player that's been hampered and it's taken away from their talent or their athleticism or their mobility. But in saying that, you didn't really play in that season, so we'll go to the next season after where you make a comeback, and you come back with a bit of a bang, to be honest.
Ibrox.
Under Tony Mowbray, yeah.
It's funny because it's Antonio Murray was meant to play that day, so we'd shaped on the Friday, and obviously going to Ibrox, you're thinking, well, if the team gets beat on Saturday, that's me, I'll get back in, and I was training really well, I was strong, I come back really powerful, and I wasn't the player that I was when I was 19, where I felt like I could run, I felt as though I could cover every single blade. I always like to think I was a worker and I could get a boot, but it certainly stopped that wee bit. I was probably more involved in an attacking sense pre-injury compared to when I was post-injury. I think I naturally put a wee bit more behind the ball, but pre-injury I felt as though I had loads of I used to think that I used to get quite a lot of assists. I may be talking rubbish and people maybe tell me I never, but I used to feel as though I was involved a lot in around the box and playing Riordan in and wee clever passes, taking lots of set plays in around the box, corners, free kicks. Whereas probably within, I don't know, whatever, 22, 23 onwards, I never really got involved in much when it came to kind of like the attacking sense of the game. It was more like feeding into that area and then waiting for what happens next, if you know what I mean, how my kind of game evolved. But I did, to say I had nerves, starting at Ibrox, thinking that we could get trumped here, and then all of a sudden I'm back at the team. I wanted a good start, and you have a bit general banter with Antonio Murray, thinking that he's kind of pooed the bed a wee bit. And, we're going to get turned over, and now I'm going to be the one that gets thrown under the bus, and you go to Ibrox and you get trounced. But we obviously managed to win 3-0, and I still remember Scotty Brown flicking it over Peter Lovenkrantz's head and running the length of the pitch, and that's what that team was.
Yeah.
Go anyone and could go toe to toe, and if things fell into place and they scored at the right time, we were a tough nut to crack after that, because we then grew in confidence and we become more vibrant, we become more flamboyant, and we played more off the cuff. Whereas we probably, when you kind of mix it up and the game went a bit scrappy and scored against the run of play, we sometimes ended up being a bit flamboyant in the wrong way and ended up conceding more goals, and we daft things, naivety at set plays, and switch off once and teams have one chance, we had 10, they'd score theirs. Typical. We almost played like an Old Firm team, really. You know what I mean? Dominated the ball, millions and millions of chances, loads of shots, and then all of a sudden the team would go up the other end and score, if you know what I mean. And probably better teams, more experienced teams would be able to recover for that, and for whatever reason we never. But I still remember sitting on the bus outside Ibrox thinking, surely that's me. That's the wee bit of luck that I needed, that I'd never thought I had. Going to Ibrox winning 3-0, that'll be me back in the team. And I suppose I think I did stay in the team then and kind of got back to full fitness and started to turn my coin, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, see, just on the back of that game in particular, there was obviously the noises about Ivan Spriggle was actually supposed to be leaving, and there was something to do with him and Boozy. Is there something that you recall regarding that? Because obviously the famous quote is when Spriggle comes on, Gary O'Connor goes, "What the fuck is he going to do?"
I think Gaz that's true. Like, I think Gaz had said something like that. But was that was that the 3-0? It was. It was the next game was the Scottish Cup 3-0 game, wasn't it?
Yeah. The one you're referencing was Scott Brown next past Lovenkranz was
That's just Gaz's character, and it's never made out of spite. But I don't think there was any issue with Sprouler and Boozy. Did Boozy play at Ibrox that day?
He was captain that day because he's the one, he lifted him up. There's the thing when he
Sprouler left before us, did he? Did he leave before us? Did he go to Bristol City before, or was he after?
No, they were in the team. They were definitely in the team at the same time.
Definitely.
Because it just minded me a bit about. He was like Sproul was like homesick or something like that, and there was maybe a bit of something between him and Boozy, but maybe that's just something that's grown arms and legs through the years. We've all seen that happen.
Anyway, Boozy's obviously back at the Hibs, a good mate of mine, and I still actually speak to Sprouler. He messages us on Instagram and at different times and that. But fiery as they come, Sprouler and Boozy could look after himself as well, to be fair to him. But actually, it's probably one of the few changing rooms. And listen, I like Mikey Stewart, love him to bits. I've got no interest in listening to him talk rubbish on the telly, but
somebody likes some Kevin.
Great lad, and I get on really well with Mike. But apart from the odd tussle with Kenny Mikey in training, between a few, maybe 20 players, maybe we make it. Never mind one or two. But it's a changing room that I would say, especially when Tony. It probably was a wee bit more fiery when Bobby was there, a wee bit more old school. But when it come to Tony, like Tony wouldn't accept all discipline and training. Like he would literally he would treat you like you were in school. You'd get off the pitch. It was unacceptable really, and it didn't then lose the edge. And listen, I used to clatter people in training myself, and I like to use my body and my bum and get tight to people. But and then you have people like O'Connor's and Riordan's, and Riordan gets, everybody knows the area they got brought up in. He could look after himself. Dixie boy, he'd fight his granny. So there was always a wee bit fire in training, but never to the degree that the boys would. I can't ever think of once the boys getting back for training, albeit we used to drive in cars, didn't we? And obviously the minibus used to go because we never had East Mains, that there was ever an issue with any of the players when it come to actual like a proper personal grudge or that.
I think it's been noted by several previous players under Tony Mowbray that he really did bring in that kind of professionalism and raised the standards completely. Was that one of the biggest things, out with kind of his tactical nous, that improved us as a team?
Just he's the first coach that it was all technical. Everything was possession based. Everything was technical, and it wasn't that Bobby wasn't it, but Bobby was a wee bit more old school, where it was like you kind of standard kind of possession boxes, you kind of run those, maybe crossing and finishing type drills, and maybe no too much detail when it come to opposition or set plays or whatever. Everything was maybe just off the cuff a wee bit more. Do you know what I mean? And obviously a talented group that freedom is a good thing. And I love Bobby. That's like he was great for. And he doesn't get the credit that he deserves for all the kind of young players.
Yeah.
Albeit you could argue his hands were kind of tied a wee bit with the budget restraints, etc., etc. So only he could answer whether he would have gave all the players the opportunities that he did if things were different. But who knows? But he did give us them, and we're always forever grateful, really. But I would say Tony was the first manager that really grabbed a lot of the players I still remember his first when he came in to address the squad, and he was a left curveball, wasn't he, for all the Hibs fans and the media. Nobody knew he was coming. Nobody even heard of him, even though he had a good career. But he was never linked. He was never in the papers. And he big, obviously imposing man. Tony obviously being a centre back, and Vino was the same, left centre back. Vino obviously used to join in training when he first come, and they come in and introduced themselves in the changing room. And obviously I've got my crutches and I'd no long went through my surgery and obviously out for a long time, or not even knowing if I'm going to get back playing. And he's the first manager at whatever it was, 2021 or whatever, that actually made us young players feel like we could play for Man United, because that's how he was. He wanted to develop players that wanted to get better. He wasn't interested in players just coming and foreseeing training and turning up, and you know what I mean. He wanted to make players better, and he wanted us to have goals that, whether we love Hibs or no, whether we're here or no, he wanted us to, because he wanted to be the manager of Man United. That's what he said to us. I want to be the manager of Man United. That's what I want to get to in my career. I want you young players, any player in the squad, to want to push yourselves to improve every single day. And we're here for you to help you develop. We're a soundboard for you. We're a mechanism that we can help develop you. We're here. Use us. If you didn't want to use us, I'm not so sure this will be the place for you. And obviously, as young players, we're desperate to please, desperate to probably have a coach like that was a drip really for us to go on, well, a sponge, sorry, that we could go and obviously pick his brain and just use him really to try and help develop our expertise, I suppose. And he was just a match made in heaven, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think the way you've described his personality is probably a reflection of how the team played at that time as well. Fearless, would go anywhere without the fear and try and go at them, whether that be either the Old Firm or Tynecastle. Unfortunately, though, we were a bit of a roller coaster that season, and it did lead to kind of a couple of heavy defeats, obviously culminating in defeat to Hearts in the Scottish Cup.
I was a sore one, that. And, even though I love Spiller to bits and I love Gary Smith to bits, and I still speak to both of them, I was raging that day because I felt they let us down, and we actually started the game off quite well, and then kind of same again, caught in a sucker punch, and I still get my mates send me that they seem to blame me for the one-man wall when Paul Hartley, obviously, I don't know if that was Paul's third goal, or I don't know if that was his hat-trick or if that was his second, or if that was the kind of nail in the coffin. But if you thought Livingston was a sore one to stomach as a kind of player, you know, try being at Hampden when you're getting beat 4-0 off your arch rivals and you're down to 9 men. And I remember sitting in Hampden, and I'm not so sure we had choice words or whatever, but I remember being fizzing, like proper fuming at the players, because listen, I've been there myself. and let the team down and you hold your hands up. And it's not that they boys didn't, but you just, if you could ever go back in time, if you had that magic wand to just change and go back one day and then restart it all over again, that would be one of the moments that you just wish and pray that you never need to sample again.
See, just obviously lead it on for that game. You think obviously got the rest of the Mowbray era. Your famous story with Rod Petrie getting your 5-year deal, arguing over the extra 50p and stuff like that as well. And then later on in the summer, when Gary Caldwell leaves, being announced as captain. How was that period for you? Obviously, being able to secure such a big long deal, or at obviously your boyhood club, and not only that, then leading on to becoming captain. You've obviously had a very good career, Kevin. Played in loads of big games, obviously Old Firms, Edinburgh Derbies, UEFA Cup final, stuff like that. It's probably easy for you to say considering your environment just now, but where does that kind of rank for you in regards to being announced as a Hibs captain when there was probably easier people to give it to or more experienced pros to give it to at that point?
It was amazing. I still remember, probably said that, like, I've got a good memory to be fair, but and you cherish these moments. It was, I don't know if you can remember and seen some of the photos of a guy called Dougie Fowler. He was brought in by Rod Petrie, kind of like military type guy. So he'd done a lot of the fitness stuff, and I spent a lot of time with him. We used to call him Deeks used to call him old Shugals. He had the biggest calf you've ever seen in your life. But I'd done a lot of rehab with him. Obviously, I basically done so he got me into boxing and dips and pull-ups, and he used to actually put the punch bag up in the turnstiles at Easter Road, and me and him would go up in the afternoon, and he was a boxer. I was rubbish, to be fair. I wouldn't like to fight him. But we used to do the bag, and we'd do the pads, and we'd do dips and pull-ups and sit-ups and just body circuits and that, just to get me stronger. And then when the players had trained, I would kind of do, honestly, I'd done assault courses and that. I was like rolling through cones and jumping bloody hurdles and you name it, but he got me back fit and strong, to be fair to him, and I built up a brilliant relationship with him. But it was actually him, and Tony will know this, once we finished training, he came over to me when we were stretching, and he sat next to me, and it was a beautiful summer's day down at, which doesn't happen very often, down at Grant and Gasworks where we used to train, and he came over to speak to me, and he was like, he used to call me the Prince of Peebles. How's my boy? How's the Prince of Peebles? And I was like, good day. He's like, good session. I was like, aye, good day. Boys were good. He's like, he says, didn't he say nothing? He says, but I've got some news for you. I thought it was something to do with him. And he says, he was probably one of the few that never called the manager gaffer. He's like, Tony's going to have a word with you today, and he says he's going to make the club captain. And I was like, I was blown away. I genuinely was. And when you go through life, when you play football, you have loads of great experiences and you have loads of pressure on your shoulders and you get put in that kind of cauldron all the time. But to get things like that, you didn't appreciate it at the time because it's just not the way you were made. You just take things in your stride and you think you're cool and you think you're the man and everything will be all right. And I just remember sitting on the grass with the blonde spiky hair thinking that I'd won the lottery. That was me. I was over the moon. I was, as you say, there was probably, when the club captain's thing come up, there was probably a few years that thought we would have a wee chance of getting it, and I was obviously one of them. And I'd like to think the boys, a lot of them would have been quite happy and quite proud of obviously me getting that opportunity. But it was because there was a lot of big characters and a lot of good players at the time and a lot of talent. So to get that opportunity was amazing. But I've said it since day one, and I'll just go off the back of that. Make my debut is still the proudest moment in my career. Still, regardless of, cherish all of my winners' medals, cherish all of my league medals, cherish playing in the Champions League, cherish playing against all the best players, but making my debut at Dens in front of my dad for the team that I supported is what being a young football player is all about.
See, we'll unfortunately have to talk about the way unfortunately it ended at Hibs as well. But before it kind of started to unravel with Collins and stuff coming in, see the summer before that, and I could be wrong with my timeline or anything, and hopefully you'll correct me or whatever. I believe there was a bid in the summer that was maybe knocked back by the club, but you and Scotty weren't made aware of that at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong with the timeline there, but if that is correct, how did that make you feel at that time? Did it cause a bit of unrest, or did you feel like at that point the writing was maybe on the wall for that squad anyway, because obviously Deeks had left, Gary Caldwell had left, and was it maybe only a matter of time until it was just a conveyor belt of one after another?
I suppose the inevitable did feel like it was going to happen, but I cannot honestly stress that it's not how you didn't get to just pick and choose when you leave and when you go. It's just not the way it works. Like anyone that had half an idea of kind of football, like one, you need a club to negotiate with the club to get them to accept a bid. So you need the buyer party, the seller party to both agree on a thing with, and then it's then up to you, obviously you to then. You didn't need to go, obviously. Do you know what I mean? It's if the player says no, I'm not going, then you might get put in the reserves. They might try and alienate you a wee bit because it's not always rosy. Do you know what I mean? When you move, because like sometimes it's the opposite way around. The player doesn't want to go, and the club are desperate to get their money. So it's I was, I suppose, hopefully in a lucky position that like when I did move, the clubs that I was playing for didn't overly want to lose us, and it was never kind of pushed out the door as such. But when it does come around, it's difficult. But I think there was a lot made in the papers about me and Scott, which looking back when we were young, and probably a bit naive, and probably said a few things that we shouldn't have said, and probably acted in a manner that we shouldn't have done. But we'd never went through it before. We never had loads of great guidance, and we probably had an agent at the time who, by the way, got us great deals. I would never ever knock him for the deals that he got us personally. Obviously, for I can't speak for Scott, but for myself. And I know obviously Scott got a good contract at Celtic, and he's a wealthy individual, so it's not as though it's done him any harm. But it wasn't as if like we weren't happy at Hibs. It was the best thing ever. We couldn't have been any more grateful for playing and being together, and playing for the team, and the team doing well. And obviously Tony moving was a hard thing for quite a lot of the young players. And actually when John first came in, we actually thought it would be quite similar, because John had spent a lot of time at Easter Road watching Tony's team and spent a lot of time being in the office. And for whatever reason, whether it was just a calculation of John's first job, us young players getting opportunities to move on, and it's never it's never meant in that way as if like, oh, moving on to better yourself, or move on to like, oh, a bigger, better club or whatever. It's because I always think that sounds disrespectful to the club that you're leaving. It's no portrayed in that way. It's just you naturally move on. And obviously all the players kind of did. When you think of Murph moving on, Marcel, even Boozy moved on, do you know what I mean? Spiller obviously moved, Scotties, Whitties, Fletch, Riordan, O'Connor. Like, it was almost impossible for the club to retain the level of player that was there, financially probably. So it's would it have been great if they could have 100%? It would have been the kind of fairy tale Football Manager type story, but unfortunately these things are just no reality. The perfect world for me would have been maybe having a better relationship with the fans when I left. I thought you naturally think that you maybe build a wee bit buddies when you come back and you play for free, and then you party obviously the Scottish Cup, you go away, move to Dundee, then you come back and play for free again. And you think that you maybe try your best to try and build some sort of relationship that you genuinely are humble and respectful, and you mean what you kind of do, if you know what I mean. But the harsh reality is, I could run along Princes Street naked and say I love the club and I loved every second day, and it wouldn't appease some people. So you can only be what you are, really. And I'll always try and present myself in the way I believe is best. But when we did move, it was a tough time, to be honest. It wasn't an enjoyable time. There was no enjoyment in it, being in the papers every day, linked with different clubs, and speaking to different managers, and having to then obviously perform and play and do your best for the Hibs, and different players moving, different players getting linked. You could argue, some people think, oh, that's a great position to be in, but it's a challenging one. It's mentally and physically, and I suppose when you've been through it, you learn. But at the same time, when you're there and you're in that moment, you're going off the cuff a lot of times, and we probably, or I personally, I can't speak for any other lads, you probably do a few things that you maybe shouldn't have done, and you learn through your experiences.
Yeah, I know you've mentioned previously about saying that you felt like the whole move came about quite rushed. Obviously, last deal, pretty much last minute of the window. But just, I would take it back a quick second to when John was appointed as well, just before we actually touch on the actual transfer to Rangers. I know he pulled you and Scotty in and had a conversation, and that lasted over that. I'm assuming that good relationship lasted for a couple of weeks. And you've touched on the fact it's maybe a coming together of his first job and stuff he had going on, and where you guys were at, and the whole agent stuff like that as well. What was that first couple of weeks like before it kind of flipped on its head? Because like you said, you've said before, it felt like a really quick, rushed 6 weeks after the first couple of weeks before. I'm just keen to know, what was that first couple of weeks like?
It was great. The squad was great. The team was great. The team was playing well. So I think when John first came in, listen, the training certainly changed, because different managers have got different ideas, and John's training was very, very different for Tony's. A lot of recovery, a lot of stretching, a lot of warm up stuff, and certainly not the kind of high intensity training that we were used to under Tony. So it did change a lot. And that wasn't because John was a bad coach or, listen, one unbelievable football player. But at the time, probably first job and building relationships up with the players that had an unbelievable relationship with the previous manager was always going to be difficult. Listen, it might have been different if it was Jim, Bobby, Harry, never mind John Collins. It might have been difficult for any manager, even if he was the best manager in the world, just because change and people didn't like change. You feel a bit vulnerable. You're not sure. New surroundings. Well, not so much new surroundings, but new environment getting created. You know what I mean? Different training methods, different ways of talking, different tactics. All these things which people might say, well, it's the manager's choice. You're a player. Get on with it. It's not always the way it works, if you know what I mean. So the biggest thing is for a manager is getting the best out of people, and I'm not so sure John got the best out of some of us for whatever way. But I think for the first 2 or 3 weeks when he pulled me and Scotty in, I think the relationship was fresh and vibrant. And then I think the hiring of Willie Mackay was, and I still believe to this day, was the downfall in the relationship between John and Scotty and myself. There was a personal grudge and a personal gripe towards Willie, whether John just seen the writing on the wall that this guy's a super agent and he's just going to tout you to every club in the world and get you to move as soon as possible, and he didn't want that to happen. I can't answer for John, but they certainly, off the back of signing for Willie Mackay, and Willie starting to tout us around and being in the papers every day, which I presume is an uncomfortable thing for a new manager that wants his best players focused and playing, and he wants them obviously there for as long as he can. I can imagine that's difficult. I've been there at Kelty when players get injured, your star players need an operation, other teams want to sign them, you get to January and you're one of the minnows and people can come and steal your players. I get it, I've been there, so I totally respect it, but I can only think that that's maybe why the kind of relationship broke down. Because listen, I don't care what anyone says, that the application and the effort and the desire to continue to play for Hibs and to continue to give it all was these players, us players, I like to put myself in that bracket. You didn't have the career and didn't play at the level that you play at for down in tools and training. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mind at the time, I was like 13, 14, so obviously when all this stuff was coming on, I was naturally devastated because you were all my favourite players at the time, and then it was one after the other that was leaving, and then I had one strip with one name, and then it was another strip with one name, and it was one after the other. So I hope you don't mind me actually saying it. It's something I've observed over the years, because anything that you, Scotty, and that golden generation are on, I'll watch and listen and read to everything. You in particular, when you're talking about that Hibs period, you do genuinely seem quite unhappy, frustrated, upset about how it ended, and I can understand why, because of some of the comments that came out in the media that you already mentioned about as well. Do you feel like that was a mixture of the wrong man management that kind of led you down that path at that time? You've mentioned about a lot of stuff that was written in the media. I won't come on to that particular comment that at the moment, but I wanted to kind of talk about, you spoke about how proud you were about being made the captain, and then you get the captaincy taken away from you. Now, you spoke about John's personal vendetta and stuff like that he had going on. How true is the report about how that came about? Or do you think, again, it was linked to what Kenny John had going on with Willie? Because in the media, or how it came out to the fans, it was due to you turning up to Tynecastle, sore back, injury, no injured, stuff like that. How true is that side of it as well?
Yeah, that's just a lie that I never turned up for any of the games. It's just blatant lie. I don't know why, but it's and to be honest, when I see things like that, I think I quote tweeted it on Twitter when I seen them do the BBC thing, saying that like fainted injury or whatever. I think if you asked anyone that I played with, any squad, any person that knows me, that would be, it's ludicrous that really. But listen, I've got no problem with John. It's going over kind of old ground. It's, as I say, brilliant player. Never seen eye to eye with him as a manager, for whatever reason. Listen, I could tell you a million stories really, and I suppose that's why you're on. But like, I turned up on a Friday and I wasn't even in the matchday squad, and I had to phone Mr. Petrie and he put me back in the matchday squad, and I ended up playing. Do you know what I mean? Like that was like the kind of relationship that we had at the time, which was volatile really. And it's a two-way street. I'm not blaming John or blaming myself, but one thing I certainly would never accept off anyone is just telling me that I never played in a game. Listen, I played 17 games for Middlesbrough with a broken leg, so I'm pretty sure I would have turned up to Tynecastle to have a sore back. And then even the next thing is, I've never had a sore back in my whole career. I've had double hernia, I've had 2 cruciate ligament injuries, I've had 4 broken legs, but I've touch wood, I'm going to get a sore back tomorrow. I'm going to wake up. I've never had a sore
You've carried a few players in your time, but you've never had a sore back.
I've never had a sore back in my life. But listen, I just think that, and I mean this, and I might be totally wrong. And by the way, I've seen John at different events and that, and he's come over to speak to us, and I find that difficult when you want to fall out and maybe criticise each other. But I got a national paper apology for the Sun or the Record that quoted me as the instigator for doing the player revolt. I had left to go to Rangers when the player revolt happened. I never knew anything about the player revolt happening. I didn't ken anything about the player revolt still happening. All I ken is that there was 22 or 23 players out of 25 that met somewhere with Mr. Petrie to complain about things that were going on. That's the only thing I know about it. Yeah, I got the blame for it. I'd left the club however many months before it. But
going by his interview after the Dunfermline game, Scott Brown didn't care about it either. Remember that? Just did you go and meet him? I don't know.
And that's the thing, and we're all big boys now. It's kind of water under the bridge as such. But I think it's hard when somebody maybe questions your integrity and questions your kind of your desire to be a professional. I think is probably the hardest part. But listen, I would never question his good person. I think difficult situation, inheriting a really good group that were naturally all going to move on. Probably if he could do it again, I think he would, and maybe change some things that maybe that happened with the players, maybe say different things. In a perfect fairy tale world, it would be brilliant to leave Hibs at the right time that the club get maximum money for. And it's hard when you move to a club that's obviously a rival with the fans that you're leaving. And by the way, I grew up in an era at Hibs that Hibs and Rangers weren't as big a rivalry as they are now. I grew up in an era where Hibs and Hearts was the rivalry and everybody just hated Hearts. Whereas obviously off the back of probably the relegation, going to the Championship, the hatred between the two clubs is bigger than it's ever been. It wasn't like that when I grew up. So you could argue maybe probably after my career, effectively, the hatred has become more. And I think that's naturally because I get treated quite well through there. It's like there's like an easy thing to jump on. But I think we're all long enough in the tooth now to know that I care about both clubs. I'm proud to represent both of them. I love playing for the Hibs. My kids are at the academy. I'm a season ticket holder. And by the way, I'll say this live on the podcast. It breaks my heart to give the club 300 quid for my boys to sit next to the Ultras when they get 2 free tickets every week for the academy. But I still pay my 300 quid. And I ask for any special treatment. I just want the boys to have the same dream that I had and try and support them. And if they want to go Easter Road every Saturday, then I'm privileged that they're keen to go.
No, you're right. Your love for the club certainly does come across, and every time you speak about the club, it was an observation that I noticed in plenty of interviews over the years, and it's always just been a burning question for me. So I appreciate you being as open and honest with that. I think another thing I hope you'll be as open and honest with. Unfortunately, it goes without saying I can't not mention the whole broken glass comment. I know you got rid of that comment a few years ago and tried to put it to bed and stuff like that. How does that comment come about in the first place? Because I know you said years back on record that it didn't come from you, it came from elsewhere, all paper talk and stuff like that. How does something like that come about, and does it still frustrate you to this day that a lot of the Hibs support, I know you can't appease every fan, and I know you're a proud man, but that must still have kind of a burning frustration within you, and I'm just keen to know how it kind of came about, and not only how it came about at the time, but does it still kind of piss you off a wee bit?
I suppose it does. It's I don't even know how it comes about. How these 9 times out of 10 when you pick up the paper and you listen, we're all probably on social media. I enjoy social media now. I wouldn't have when I played. Obviously, it's a big thing for academy. I didn't care what anyone says anymore. I probably was like, I'm maybe a wee bit more fragile when I played, and I maybe cared a wee bit more. But now I'm like, as you've just said, there, you just can't please people, and it's you could run along Princess Street naked and sell your heart to people, and it still wouldn't make any difference. People have just got an opinion, and that's it. It goes back to the old saying, like my mum sitting in the stand and somebody shouting, "Thomson, you're shite, you're rubbish," and my dad's like, "The game's not even started yet, mate." Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you know what it's like, and these people that come on social media and say that the team were rubbish and so and so. I'll use Boyley because he's my mate. Boyley was rubbish that day. The person's probably not even been at Easter Road. I watched the game, just see Hibs getting beat off of whoever, and maybe somebody say, "Oh, Boyley wasn't at the races today," and before you know it, 20 people are saying Boyley was rubbish today. Do you know what I mean? He's potentially maybe had a good game, maybe missed a chance, whatever. So I suppose when that And listen, I dug Jacko out for it. Jacko's a mate of mine. I dug him out because it's not true. I never said that, and I stick by that. I've never read the actual paper interview, whether it's actually quoted saying that or if it's just the headline. You would need to tell me if you have actually read that and it's actually quoted within it, or if it's just a headline. But normally the headlines are to get people to read it, and that many times you see the headline. But one thing I'd like to say is, like, I'm soon to be 40 in October. Like, it's not even a terminology it's not even a natural terminology to use, really. Do you know what I mean? Even as a young, stupid lad, really. Do you know what I mean? So, and the only reason I know I never said it is because, and I've said to Jacko, we've had an argument about it, we fell out, we've kissed and made up, but you could argue it haunted me for a long, long time, really. Do you know what I mean? And I was a young player having to go back to Easter Road 2 or 3 weeks later as a Rangers player and play at Easter Road to have the whole stadium boo me. But for me, that rather than going over old ground, when I come on as a sub against Hearts at Easter Road for Pat Fenley, when I come back up the road from Middlesbrough, and the ovation that I got when I went on for I think 3 or 4 minutes at the end of the derby was unbelievable. The ovation, albeit one of the biggest disappointing parts of my career, getting relegated at Easter Road against Hamilton, when I come on after an hour, the ovation that I got when I come on is far more important to me than what obviously maybe somebody says on Twitter or whatever. But it does, and I think it probably pisses me off a wee bit more because it's Hibs, and then you do care about them and you have a long affiliation, and we were part of a good era, we were good players, we did do quite well for the club, we did make the club a few quid, and I suppose that's like, no, all we did because it's a 2 week straight. The club gave us a brilliant platform, great opportunities, looked after us, you know, still do. My boys love it to bits, down at East Mains 3 nights a week, and obviously travelling all over the country to represent the club to try and have the same dream that I had. So it does, but just going over old ground, really telling you that I could run along Princess Street naked, and the person that doesn't like me will still not like me.
Aye. Like we both said, you're never going to be able to appease everybody either. Do you know what I mean? And everyone's always going to have an opinion. So it's just unfortunate that not everyone's opinion can be right at the end of the day.
Aye, listen, likes, it's their opinion. That's just the way it is.
Exactly. That's exactly. Kind of moving on a wee bit as well. Obviously, you spoke about all the good players that were at the club, took their time, they moved. Quite a lot of them went to Celtic and Rangers. You had yourself, Caldwell, Riordan, Witts, Bruni, even Chris Killen and stuff like that as well, Ian Murray. What was it like then coming up against some of those boys? And was there a specific matchup? Naturally, the one would be against you and Scott Brown. But was there any other matchups in games against these boys that you really, really enjoyed? And what was either the pre or the post-match banter leading up to those games, or if you met up with Scotty outside the football, you know, was there a bit of to and fro in between then as well?
Yeah. Listen, you naturally, we've never ever. You can imagine when I mention Scott's name when you're doing a function at Ibrox or whatever, it doesn't go down particularly well. But I'm thick enough skin I'm not going to change my alliance to Scotty and our friendship. It's forever, really. Do you know what I mean? So, but you naturally, when you're on the other side of the old firm, you go toe to toe and you put everything on the line. It's normal. It's what you'd expect to happen. And then what the naive people would expect to happen is that we never speak and we didn't like each other just because we play for different teams. We're bestie pals, you know what I mean? I still care about him, I still wish him every success, still speak all the time. His boys obviously at East Mains as well, his boys in between my two boys, so, and Whitty's boys in my youngest boys' team, so albeit when they were at Fleetwood, see them less, when they're obviously now at Ayr, see them less, but there's a time where we're down at East Mains on a Monday night, standing and talking, and obviously the love for the club is there for everybody to see, really. But it's the one thing I always try and say when I get that wee bit older is, I don't want a pat on the back for supporting the club. I don't want a pat on the back for saying I'm any different from anyone else. So I'm just the same as you guys, really, and everybody else that goes to Easter Road and everybody else that loves the club, really. Do you know what I mean? But it's I suppose it's hard when you feel as though somebody dislikes you just because you've maybe played for another team or there was a headline in the paper, and what they forget about all the 8 or 9 years that you played for the club and playing for free, and it cost me money to play for the club, really. Whether anyone wants to build that up or no, it's like I had to drive to East Mains every day. Do you know what I mean? And quite a nice car that cost me quite a lot of petrol. Do you know what I mean? But I'd done it because I wanted to. I didn't need to do it. I could have just sat in the house if I wanted to. But I wanted to play. I wanted to risk injury. I wanted to help. I had the dream of the Scottish Cup when I come back up the road, still in the semi-final, albeit at half-time. I thought it was the worst decision I'd ever made in my life. And then Griff obviously pulls us out the shiter, really. Do you know what I mean? I think half the Hibs fans were back in Edinburgh. But another low moment in my life, thinking, for me again, man, what's this all about? You know what I mean? It's be Kevin Thomson's fault again. And then obviously then you have the disappointment in the final, you beat off Celtic after you watch Scotty lift the Scottish Cup for Celtic. It's like, listen, the emotion and roller coaster that you go on when you're a player and how much you care is, I think a lot of people misinterpret how much we actually care. It's our life, eh? It's what you work hard for. It's all the sacrifice, you know what I mean?
Speaking of roller coasters, you obviously had one down at Middlesbrough. Obviously, everything that happened at Rangers, we all kind of know why the sale ended up happening and what transpired through in the West as well. But see, there was a big influx of SPL players down at Middlesbrough at that time, obviously through Gordon Strachan and then obviously Tony as well. What do you think, not just for yourself, but what do you think the reason was that it maybe just didn't work out for the boys that had played up here and then went down? Because it's not as if they weren't good quality players. You said yourself, like barring some injuries, you could have maybe even played at a higher level, and I can't disagree with that. But when you've got the likes of like Chris Boyd, for example, prolific goal scorer, you've got Stephen McManus, who was Celtic captain at that point, Scott McDonald banging in goals, Zamama was at us as well. And then it never really worked out for any of them down there. What do you reckon the reason for that was? Because it was a quick turnaround in a couple of years.
I just think just too many too soon, I think. And probably tried to, the old scenario, try to buy a bit of success and quite quickly. And I think Gordon, listen, I love Strax. He was brilliant. I wish I had a bit more time with him. Very Tony Mowbray-esque, but totally different personality. And he inherited a lot of, I don't know if you could argue there were problems, but he inherited a lot of like the big Premier League players like Mido and Degar, and there was quite a lot of players, albeit some of them played, Gary O'Neill's, Julio Arcas, they were on the big Premier League contracts, you know what I mean? So there was a kind of disparity, even though we were well paid and obviously looked after, but there was, and that wasn't any disgruntlement of the players, but it was a difficult dynamic. Sometimes they were training at different times or coming in early and using the gym facilities, etc., etc. I just think they obviously, we never got off to a great start, and it was in the Championship when you then got off to a great start, you're under a bit of pressure. And I think when Tony come in, the team was always the same squad really that Gordon put together, and maybe some of the ones that Gordon just wasn't fancying, Tony gave. I'm thinking of kind of Joe Bennett off the cuff, Marvin Emnes. They were boys that were in the reserves, and Gordon had no time for these boys, and Tony kind of gave everybody a clean slate. And Marvin scored a lot of goals, went on to Swansea. Joe Bennett, I think, signed for Villa for £4-5 million. So you could argue Tony maybe seen good in people that Gordon didn't. But Gordon was a bit like that, quite hard nosed, and if you weren't his cup of tea, you kind of pushed it aside quite quickly. So I just think, looking back, probably too many players, too big a squad turnaround, i.e. 10, 12, 15 players signing and throwing a lot of money at it, and it just probably contrasted players and the kind of togetherness to try to build a team quite quickly to play Saturday, Tuesday, probably caught, I don't know if it caught the level of play out. I think the players were good enough. It just probably caught that team gel, and that you could argue probably lesser teams done better in the Championship than what obviously that Middlesbrough squad done. And I'm not so sure that's because they were better players, just maybe a wee bit more consistent and maybe less turnaround, and maybe a manager at that time maybe a wee bit more tried and tested in the Championship, which maybe knew what type of team to try and build, and maybe Gordon maybe got a few of the players wrong.
And see, when Tony came in, did that give you like a new lease of life, thinking this could be a wee kickstart for you again? Because obviously you struggled with injury down there, and that probably derailed a lot of your time there, leading to like the end of your time there. But see, when he came in, how did that make you feel? Do you feel like, right, I can kickstart, I can go again, this is another chance for me? Or do you think it was again with your injuries just kind of bad luck?
Aye, well, listen, I was lucky down there because Gordon treated me like I was a king. He was brilliant with me. I was the kind of star man as such. No, I'm not saying a star player, but he treated me like I was one of the boys. Really, do you know what I mean? He was never ever hard on me. Gordon's got one of these personalities where he can make you go from 10 foot tall to being a snake's belly. Really, do you know what I mean? He's got right witty banter, and he can be quite close to the cloth with it at times. You know what I mean? To make you feel quite low. If you maybe make a mistake or whatever, but obviously thick skin, the boys can handle that. But obviously some cannot, unfortunately, and I'm not so sure the local lads took to Gordon, the ones that inherited. I think Gordon thought that there was too many of them that were overpaid and didn't justify their wages, and he probably never had a great relationship with them. But when it come to me, it was brilliant for me. And then obviously, as you say, if you could pick a new manager when you've got a broken leg to come in, would be one that I'd obviously had a good relationship with the Hibs, had tried to sign me at West Brom, had kind of chased me kind of through my career as such, and then all of a sudden he's your manager. So it was kind of match made in heaven again. I think that the hardest part for Tony and myself was that I wasn't the fit Kevin Thomson that could play every week, and whenever I had a run of games, I think 6 games was the most games I ever played down there, and it probably was under Tony. And it always felt when I got to game 3 or 4, I started to get fit and I started to influence the team and I started to feel good about myself, I then pull my calf. Obviously, I went through getting a plate put on my leg when Tony was there. I'd kind of played stop-start, kept on having problems with it. And we probably come to loggerheads a wee bit when he kind of questioned, or the physios kind of questioned my desire to play, really, which was obviously evident in the stats afterwards that I'd been playing with a broken leg. So that was a hard one to stomach. And obviously, I kind of looked for reassurance off of Tony to kind of support me through that, which I probably never had at the time. So I felt probably quite alone in that, which is fine. I was big enough and brave enough to deal with it. But I suppose when you then find out that you had been playing with a broken leg, it felt a wee bit of a kick in the teeth that people were kind of questioning your desire to play. And I'm not so sure playing with a broken leg and then getting a plate put on it to eventually fix it helped my kind of health, really. I never really had any calf injuries in my whole career as such, just big injuries, and then I constantly kept on breaking down with calf injuries. So without being a medical science or expert, I'm pretty sure that playing a broken leg and getting a plate put on my shin was probably a catalyst for more problems kind of further down the line for me. So match made in heaven with Tony, love him to bits, and obviously wish him well if he's, I don't know if he'll ever listen to this, but if he does or if it gets picked up, we obviously wish him well with what he's going through, because he's going through a wee tough time with the family and that. So, but he's a diamond guy.
You spoke about medical experts. How many of them do you think we need to take a look at Mido when he comes back at the beginning of pre-season? How big was he? He must have been some size, right?
He had to be a big lad to carry his wallet.
Some of the stories about him are diamond, honestly. It would be rude of us, Tom, not to touch on your Scotland experience. Obviously, it must be one of your proudest moments of your career. I couldn't quite believe that it was only 3 caps, if I'm being honest. I still can't get over the fact there's only 3 caps. You're probably the same. Obviously, 245 minutes, one against, correct me if I'm wrong, debut against Northern Ireland. Then you had the Czech Republic game and obviously the Sweden one as well. All the managers in charge at the time were ex-Jambos as well, so who would have thought that, right? But how were those experiences for you? And do you kind of feel like, again, maybe just wrong timing, wrong luck at the wrong time as well? Because we had so much quality in your position, but you obviously would have been up there. You've got Darren Fletcher, Scotty as well. How did that sit with you?
It's probably the one regret I've got, probably, or the one frustration, minus the injuries and maybe no fulfilling, I suppose. So you could argue there's a few, but the Scotland ones I think is a hard one, because I was probably involved in every squad for kind of 23, 24 right through to kind of 28, 29, and I probably a lot of trips. I probably sacrificed international caps to be fit for my club, and obviously I probably had quite a unique body after having 2. A lot of people didn't recover for 2 crucial ligament injuries, never mind having 2 before you get to 23. So to get back and become a national player and obviously move and then move again for Hibs for the first one to Rangers to then Middlesbrough for obviously my second one. So I'd like to think that proves that I've got a wee bit of resilience and a wee bit about me, really. Do you know what I mean? And a wee bit of drive as an individual to recover. But the Scotland one, I think, was I probably sacrificed playing for Scotland to be fit for my club, whichever club that was when I was getting called in. And it's I'm not being disrespectful to anyone that gets international caps, because they're really precious and they're really proud moments, but I should have easily got 25, 30 caps for my country. And probably fitness along with not playing at different times to kind of protect me for i.e. 45 minutes against Czech Republic, so turning up knowing that you're only playing 45 minutes, because my body probably would have been to play 90 minutes on the Tuesday or the Wednesday night against Czech Republic, to then have to go again, say, for 12:30 on a Saturday morning kickoff would have been a challenge for me. So probably a wee bit unfortunate with the body that I was given for health and fitness wise, but a wee bit frustrated when you think back to I should have got many more, to be honest.
Well, it looks like Sean has bought his Wi-Fi from Lidl's, because he's dropped off the call. I have no idea.
I thought he was a board mate, I don't know.
Exactly. He was like, I've not listened to him anymore. So you ended up leaving Middlesbrough in the January, and you came up the road training for Hibs for a wee while, and then it was well documented that you were willing to play for free. Just how true was that, Kev?
When I come back up the road, I still had a calf injury at the time when I left Middlesbrough. So I come back up the road. I done my own rehab. I kind of went in the gym. I started to have a wee run outside. I tried to build my fitness up, and I had a few of them mad offers for like Kazakhstan and India and these type of places, and it never really floated my boat. But naturally, the money, you're like, I'll just go for a season or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But I'd just been paid off from Middlesbrough, so financially, I was that scunnered a wee bit with how it kind of transpired for my kind of 2.5-3 years at Middlesbrough. I felt really unfulfilled about like producing the goods really. And then when I come back up the road, I just wanted to be home with my family really and with my pals and be back in my own house and kind of switch off a wee bit. But within a few days, I'm obviously thinking about like, where's my next job? Where's my next club? And I had a chance to go to Real Valladolid, and it fell through when I was at the airport. I'd checked in, I'd agreed the deal. I was going over to either stay in a hotel or an apartment. They only had 3.5 months to left to go to the end of the season. I was a wee bit, dug my heels in a wee bit because I thought 3.5 months is like a wee bit of a token gesture deal. Do they really want me? So they ended up coming back and offering me a 2.5 year deal, which i.e. 2 and 3.5 months or whatever. So I was like, right, let's go for it. So I went over, I was meant to go over to Real Valladolid. I was at Edinburgh Airport with the agent, bags packed, sitting in the departure lounge, and the agent's away on the phone, and he comes back and he was like, the deal's off. So the deal actually fell through when I was at Edinburgh Airport after I said bye to the wife and kids, etc., etc. Bags were packed. I'd planned on going over for free. I think I had like 16, 17 games to go, thinking this is me, a wee opportunity, bit sunshine, bit heat in my body, Spanish football, suit me, technical, you know what I mean? Pass. Good wee opportunity for me. I've landed on my feet a wee bit. And then when it fell through, I kind of felt as though I was like left in the lurch. And that doesn't mean like left in the lurch, oh, I'm going to pick up the phone to Hibs. I actually picked up the phone to Rod to say, listen, I had an opportunity to go to Spain. I've obviously left Middlesbrough. I'm a free agent. I knew other players had been in, Deeks, Gaz, to use the facilities in the past. I'd seen it obviously in the papers. So I said, would you be able to phone the manager or give me the manager's number? Would I be able to come and maybe use the facilities, maybe train with the team or train with the reserves just to try and stay fit? And he was like, I'll ask him. He says, I'm sure it'll be no problem. So then Pat phoned me. He was like, listen, Tom, use us when you want. You're more than welcome. Come anytime you want. We're training tomorrow if you want to come in tomorrow. So I went in and trained. And I really enjoyed training. Pauls and Louis, and knew some of the boys. Never knew a lot of the lads like Kenny Gary Deegans and that. You'll obviously know Pat Fenlon squad, but I knew quite a few of the boys. And I loved it. And I trained, finished training, went home. Text Pat, said, are you training tomorrow? He's like, we're training, Tomo. He's like, normal time, come in if you want. So I went back in. I went in, I think, for 2 or 3 days and trained, and then they had a game. I think they played Kilmarnock, and I want to say Griff maybe scored a hat-trick that day down at Kilmarnock, or 2 at least, on the telly. It was live on the telly. It was a Sunday game or a Saturday game. Got no bad memory, eh? And Griff scored, and I watched the game, and obviously the Hibs always take a great support to Kilmarnock. I'm sure they played in the yellow strip that day. Didn't quote me on it.
Yeah.
I just remember seeing it, watching the game, and seeing Lee scoring in front of the Hibs, and I thought, I could play for the Hibs now, you know. So I went in and trained again the next game week, and I went to see Pat, and I had a chance to go to Blackburn. So I said, listen, I've got an opportunity to go to Blackburn. I'm going to go down for a few days. They've offered me a deal, kind of in principle, because I didn't want to go down in trial, really, know that I'm too big, but I've been at the Championship for the last time. I'm an international player. Like, they surely didn't need to see me train for 2 or 3 days. Michael Appleton was the manager at the time, and he used to scout for West Brom for Tony Mowbray, so knew us, picked up the phone. He was like, listen, I just want to know that you're fit. I said, I'm fit. I've been training at Hibs, looking after myself. I'm ready to go, really, albeit I've not played for maybe 2 or 3 weeks since I've left Middlesbrough. So I went down, trained for a couple of days, spent a bit of time, obviously, with the boys. Went to see Michael after the second day's training, and I said to him, listen, how's things, blah, blah, blah. He was like, listen, Tom, you've been great. Desperate for you to come in. Due to meet the owners tomorrow night after the game, have dinner with them. He says, obviously, the owners are a bit volatile, blah, blah, blah. I said, so what do you want me to do? I said, you want me to go back up the road? He said, I'll go back up the road. And I'm driving up the road speaking to my dad, and the English radio comes on that they've just signed Phil Jones for Wigan, left-sided midfielder. I'm like, I felt like a right kick in the teeth. So that day, I text Pat to say, listen, I'm coming back up the road. Nothing's happening at Blackburn. Can I come in and train again? And he's like, defo, Tomo. He's like, yeah, we're training at whatever normal time. So I went back in the next again morning, drove up for Blackburn, down on the whatever it was, the Sunday night, train Monday, Tuesday. Sorry, it must have been, drove down on a Wednesday, trained Thursday, Friday. They played on the Saturday. I come back up the road Friday night. Hibs must have had a game on the Sunday, I think. So they trained on the Saturday. And I went in on the Saturday, never went to the game on the Sunday. The next game week, I think, was Derby week. And I said to Pat, I says, can I get a game? And he was like, you joking? He says, we've got no money. I said, I'm not bored with money. I said, I just want to play. He's like, let me speak to the gym. And he's like, you really want to play? And I was like, I want to play. So they only had to, obviously, I'm thinking they're still in the Scottish Cup semi-final. On a selfish note, do you know what I mean? I'm thinking I've got a chance to try and help the team. I've got the fairy tale. And I had John Brown on the phone, who'd never forgiven me. It was at Dundee at the time, and they were in the at the bottom of the league. He said, listen, Tomo, love you to come up to Dens, need an experienced head. We cannot pay you the money that you would expect, but one of the sponsors is going to write you his own cheque, basically. So they offered me a contract, a good contract, to be fair, for whatever it was, 3.5 months. And when I ended up coming out in the papers and signed for Hibs for free, John Brown certainly wasn't happy up at Dundee. But I actually knocked back a good wage up at Dundee to play for the Hibs that season. So it wasn't just playing for free. I actually knocked back a good salary up at Dundee. But I'd been paid off in Middlesbrough. It wasn't like I needed it. It wasn't going to make any difference in my life. And I thought that 3.5 months, get playing, be home, know the club inside out, know the boys, liked the manager, treated me really well. And I just wanted to play. I was just a boy that wanted to play football.
Aye. And you talk about your memory, Tomo, but do you remember who scored the other goal in that game, in that 4-2 game for Hibs?
What, the Kilmarnock game?
Aye.
Oh. Did Griff score a hat-trick that day?
Griffith
Or just
scored a hat-trick, aye.
Scored a hat-trick, aye. Wasn't it Owen Doyle, was it?
No, it was
Doyle,
Matt Dunn.
Was it Matt Dunn, was it?
Matt Dunn, aye.
I just remember, I wasn't sure if Lee scored 2 or I wasn't sure if it finished 3-2 or 4-2. Were they not getting beat 2-0?
I think it was kind of... Oh, no, I think we went 1-0 up.
1-0 and then 2-1 down.
If I'm wrong. And then 2-1 down, and then...
I remember Lee scoring, like, and that was kind of the...
We got an absolutely ridiculous penalty that day, and I mean ridiculous by like the Kilmarnock boy a bit caught. I'm sure Griffiths took a free kick, and the boy a bit caught the ball, and that was he scored. I'm sure he scored the penalty for his hat trick.
That was a mental day. That it was class.
What a player!
If Mark was on, Mark loved that day. We love a Scottish Cup quarter final away day at the Ramble here, but what was even better was the 4-3 Falkirk game. You touched on it a wee bit earlier on, but 3-0 down at half time against Falkirk, who were in the first division at the time. What are you thinking? What's been said in the changing room?
Well, listen, I think it ended up hitting the papers. I think it was Griff that told the papers that I'd had a few choice words at half time with kind of everybody really. Pat Fenlon didn't need to do the team talk at half time because I'd kind of the worst thing that actually happened was Tam and Joyce had gave me a bottle of Powerade or a bottle of water as soon as I walked in the changing room, and I kind of threw it at whoever was sitting. I think maybe James McPake and a few others were kind of sitting in the corner hand, and I kind of threw it, and I just said to them, it was off the cuff. It was just through the heart. It was, and I was including myself really, that we were an embarrassment to the club and to the fans, and we've let everybody down, and we better maybe a few swear words in there, get our finger out and make sure that whatever happens that we get out in that pitch and turn this around really. So Pat, I think they thought their job was up that day at 3-0 down, do you know what I mean? So you're feeling for people, because they're people, do you know what I mean? It's all right thinking that they're managers and they're robots, but they're people, and people are playing for their livelihoods, and Pat was desperate to be a success, and you can feel the pressure when changing rooms, and obviously the fans they're proud fans, there's big expectation to play with the Hibs, so especially when you get to Hampden, they've got that craving to obviously get one step closer and obviously try and get hands on trophies. So I was fully aware how disappointed and how much stick the group were going to be getting. I just couldn't believe, for the love of me, for the career that I had, how poor a performance that we were capable of putting on, and me included. I never thought I could ever play in a team that would whimper as much in a first half of football at a national stadium in all my life, and it was hard to take. And I made my feelings clear, including myself in it, looked myself in the mirror as I always did. And thankfully, I think I went off maybe 60, 65 minutes or something. And I still remember jumping up off the bench when Griff scored, and I'm not so sure there was anyone in the country with a left juke like Griff had that could have scored that goal. What a talent, what a player, what a finisher. But the elation after it was, I think, was more relief than than happiness and joy. But then the dream was alive, albeit an anticlimax dream. But I was thinking it was the best decision I'd ever made. Obviously, going back to the club to then have the boyhood dreaming trying to get your hands on that Scottish Cup.
Nah, that was an incredible day. It was weird at 3-0 down. Looking back on it now, that was probably kind of Falkirk's golden generation. You know, Lyle Taylor, Blair Alston, was Sybil there at the time, I think,
Sybil
maybe.
was there, right?
They had a glorious
And-
chance as well, right on half time to make it 4.
Yeah, to make it 4.
I think it was probably the easiest chance out of the lot that they had to. And was it Lyle Taylor? I think he was 1-on-1 with, was it Ben Williams that was in goals?
Yeah, I
And
think
he's-
so. Aye. What a player he
he's
was,
got
by
it
the way,
past the
Lyle
post.
Taylor.
Paul Kearney,
Yeah.
but I think had the worst, single-handedly the worst game. A great lad. Still speak to him now. He's a good player, by the way. Single-handedly the worst performance I've ever seen in a Hibs jersey was Paul
I
Kearney
mean,
that day.
Tim Clancy.
And we told him about it every day afterwards. I think Scott Robertson got the hook after about 20-25 minutes as well.
I think, was it not Danny Handlin that came on for him? Because he won, because folk forget as well.
He won the penalty.
Griffiths missed the penalty. too.
Alex Harris always. Alex scored the first one, didn't he?
And then Doyle
Yeah.
scored a toe poke for like 20
Doyle,
seconds.
even against Celtic. Listen, Celtic beat us at men v boys really in the final, but Doyle had a chance. We started well in that game on the front foot, and as you would expect, you know what I mean, cup final. But us probably nothing to lose, albeit Hibbies proud and want to win. But Celtic were the dominant force at the time, expected to go and win doubles and trebles. The kind of team they had, obviously under Lenny, like your Hoopers and that. Do you know what I mean? Like the big hit of players, really, Scotties, obviously, etc. And Doyle had that header early doors after like 6 or 7 minutes. And it's amazing how big moments when you're up against it and you're maybe an underdog, if you score, you got something to hold on to, and then their fans got on their back. It's amazing how things swing. But in the end, that cup final was probably the one where you just felt like we could have played all day and all night, no scored a goal, and Celtic could have turned up again and probably kept on playing for another 10 hours and probably kept on playing with their slippers, and it wouldn't have made any difference.
I still think that we made a really good account of ourselves in that final, you know, compared to what happened 12 months prior when, you know, we got pumped by
never
Hearts.
played in
Yeah, exactly. But I remember, you know, the different, obviously the end result's still the same. You're coming up as runners up instead of winners. But I remember being at the game and thinking, Ken, what, that's a team to be proud of. I thought it was a really, really good performance. I mean, I might be looking back at green tinted glasses. You might know how the same, but
I remember playing Griff behind. Griff got in behind. I didn't think Virgil and that never played then. He got in behind somebody centre back. I clipped one over the top of him, and he kind of like Griff, like you'd literally a bit like Riordan. You just put your money on them. They just got away. They're just technically so good and sniff out chances. And when they get a chance, just watch it every day in training. When you train with them, just the ball ends up in the back of the net. Any like a variety finish, headers, free kicks, half volleys, sclaffs, strikes, like tap ins, places, like just so talented individuals when it comes to finishing. And that's what floats their boat. It gets them excited. That's what they are. I mean, he did. I think he got in behind it like 1-0, and the goalie come rushing out. And I don't know whether he like didn't get there or he toe poked it. Or I can remember a chance, and I'm thinking, like, just one like thinking started well, and then you go one behind like for nothing, and then you get your chances, and you never have that mindset. But the natural thing is when you're playing, you're working and you're desperate and you're grafting and you're looking for opportunities. You try to get tight to your men, you try to play the game plan, but you naturally think like it's just never going to be. Do you know what I mean? Even though that's not your body language and it's no like your attitude towards the game, but it's like you kind of look at the sky sometimes and you just hope that you've got the kind of luck on your side, because you need it at times, especially cup finals, one-off games, because anyone can beat anyone.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously we proved that a few years later. But before we get to that, unfortunately, you know, Pat Fenlon lost his job the following season, and Big Terry Butcher comes in. I think that us as fans have got a lot of responsibility to take for that, because he was the one that everyone wanted. He'd done all right up at Inverness, and everyone was going, "Oh, we need to get Butcher in." You know, the last few appointments where I think it was Fenlon and Calderwood, and everyone was kind of fair enough, like coming in to steady the ship, but that's no the big name that we want, and Butcher was. What was your initial reaction when Butcher got the job?
Well, we had obviously Owen Tudor-Jones at the time, and he never painted an overly great picture of how he plays and how he trains. So I knew Maurice Malpass for 21s, and I got on really well with Mo. Totally different environment, totally different team, different manager. Rainer Bonhoff was pass. Terry and obviously Morris up at Inverness. Whether that's what Morris believes in, if he was a manager, maybe have different tactics. I don't know. You need to ask Mo that. But obviously, certainly when he was assistant to Rainer Bonhoff at 21s, when we built up a relationship with him, Rainer was just pass. It's all he believed in. Loads of possession, loads of passing draws. Whereas Terry wanted to play long balls. So Mo obviously coached that. I found that difficult as an individual. The players found it difficult. But the harsh reality is, like, if the manager tells you to play it down the channel, you try and play it down the channel. But when you cross the white line, you play how you play. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't kick it down the channel if there wasn't a green jersey in it. I would swivel out and try and pass the green jersey. So it's like, it's all right a manager telling you what to do or have tactics or whatever, but ultimately, and then it's up to him whether he picks you or not. He might turn around and say, listen, every time you get the ball, you pass it square. I want you to whack it down the channel. And you turn around and go, Gaffer, I'm going to kick it down the channel if there's no green jersey in the channel and kick the ball at the pitch. He turns around and says, that's what I want you to do. You either you date and you play or you didn't date and play. So it's just the way it is, I suppose. But I found Terry, I found him all right. He wore his heart on his sleeve. He was old school. He got after the lads. I'm not so sure the way I played football I was ever going to play in a Terry Butcher team. And I never overly enjoyed training. I never overly enjoyed, and that was kind of echoed by a lot of the players. And I will stick to my guns when I believe what I believe in. Hibs have a way, and they have in my opinion, all my pals that go to Easter Road every single week, and listen, you 4 different guys, you might have a totally different opinion to my mates and what I believe in. But there's certain clubs that you get away with playing certain types of football. And I think Hibs are one of the clubs that if you didn't play the right football and win, it'll only last you so long. Whereas if you play good football and you didn't win every week, there's more of an acceptance. The perfect scenario is winning regularly and playing good football, whatever that looks like, whether it's playing forward earlier, whether it's playing with 3 strikers, whether it's playing with attacking midfielders, whether it's scoring 3 goals and only conceding 2. But I just think I got brought up in an era that watched Darren Jacksons and watched Mickey Weirs and watched Keith Wrights to then watching Russells and Franks and Zatellis and, do you know what I mean, these type of players, and then lucky enough to wear the jersey myself to play in a team that had loads of talented players. And I think that's the one thing I would always think of as a Hibs fan is whatever attacking, exciting football looks like, and I'm not so sure that was ever going to be the case under Terry, because listen, his Inverness team were really robust, really aggressive, really big, banged it long, backed it up, great set plays. Shinnie was probably their only marquee player. Andrew at the time that was more of a baller than he was a kind of running animal, really, that was robust and powerful and, you know, really aggressive without the ball, which was kind of typified a kind of Terry Butcher Motherwell team and then a Terry Butcher Inverness team. So I never overly enjoyed that last period under him, which obviously calculated with the huge disappointment of getting relegated. But as a person, I've got no problem. I did hold grudges on people that didn't play in the team, because I've been there as a manager myself. The one thing I always try and do is treat people right, and I'm not so sure at times, like taking older players or any player, including myself, out to do extra runs in the afternoon is getting the best out of people and treating them properly. But listen, if they didn't think you're fit enough, you need to run. I get it. It's the manager ultimately has the final decision and he calls the shots. So us as players, they say jump, you say how high.
So do you think that difference in opinion, that difference in philosophy was kind of what sparked the period that you and James McPake had out of the team?
I just think I don't know if he got the best out of it. Listen, his attitude towards players was really old school and really robust, and I'm not so sure that current group of players could handle that. When I think of like young Alex Harris, do you know what I mean? Like coming back from a bad ankle injury, breaking his ankle against Motherwell. I played in that game under Pat Fenlon. He become a wee bit of a poster boy boozy, and Terry told him that he wasn't a poster boy, which is fine. It's his opinion, but I think Boozy needed the arm round the shoulder, Hanlon's, Caldwell's, Jordan Foster's, which I'd like to think I was as a senior player. I think I prided myself on being good with the young players at every club I was at. And I'm not so sure the players at that given time in their career could handle the way Terry was with them. And then you get to the kind of older generation. My myself, James McPake's, Tim Clancy's, Roman Vines, etc., Paul's, Big Nels, like every player really. But no, the bit I would say is when I watched the Hibs team as a fan when I used to go to Easter Road. So when I wasn't in a matchday squad, maybe no away game, unless it was maybe a more local one. Like obviously Tynecastle, I'd try and go to Tynecastle. If it was Ibrox or Celtic Park, I maybe wouldn't go. But if it was at Easter Road, I'd always go. I'd sometimes take my wee man, and I'd always go and support the boys. I'd always go in the change room. I'd always say good luck, and I'd always go upstairs, and I meant it, whether I was in the squad or not in the squad. And I would sit as a Hibs fan watching the game, and I would drive home in my car as disappointed as any use if the team didn't perform. The bit I would say, and I've never ever said this, is I looked at guys like Ryan McGivern, who was an international football player, who looked like a bag of nerves playing for Hibs at the tail end of his career. And I'm not so sure that was anything to do with Ryan's ability or as a person. I think it was the environment he was in and how he was treated. And I'm not so sure the management staff got the best out of people. And I'm using Ryan as an example because he played in big games. He was a fan's favourite for a period of time. He could play left back, he could play left centre back. He was 6'1", he was athletic, and then he got to the stage where he received it at left back and he used to kick out the pitch every week. And I'm not so sure that was getting the best out of him. I looked at boys like that, wee boozies, etc., who were exciting young talents, and I just didn't think that they got the best out of that crop of players. And listen, it calculated, and the proof was in the pudding. The club suffered the way the club suffered.
For sure. And I mean, after the first leg against Hamilton, I thought it was in the bag, to be honest. I was thinking, well, I'm just turning up here to Easter Road for a jolly. And obviously Hamilton didn't think that. And do you look back on that as probably the biggest disappointment of your career?
It was a hard day, and obviously the kind of protests and the fans were obviously made themselves heard after the game, and players having to get escorted to their car. And listen, I went out the back door with my wee man, and I spoke to quite a big group of fans who, to be fair, were great with us, but it didn't hide any disappointment for how we were all feeling, really. And I'd never took a penalty in my career, professional, in any of the penalty shootouts, and obviously I'd like to think I probably wasn't treated overly well in and out the kind of team, you know what I mean, pushed to the side a wee bit and then kind of called upon when things were starting to go south. I think I only made 3 or 4 starts under Terry, and obviously the Hamilton game, he actually said to me, we'll try and get through the first leg and you'll play at Easter Road. So I was like, well, I might accept that, because probably playing obviously through the week on the AstroTurf and then playing obviously at Easter Road will be a good thing for me. And I'm not trying to be too critical, really. I'm just trying to be honest. But there was what you just said there: turn up to Easter Road and think that the job was already done. I told the players that the job wasn't done, and I was reiterating that to them because I thought Hamilton were very good that night. And Cummings scores for 25 yards, and then scores a wee neat one at the near post. And I'm not so sure 2-0. And the way Terry celebrated in front of the Hibs fans was, I've genuinely had animosity in my stomach. I could feel it. And then when we started, I thought Hamilton battered us, to be honest, at Easter Road. I thought they were a good team. I thought Alex Neil had them fired up. They had lots of good young players. The one that John Collins really liked, the attacking boy, number 10, he ended up going and playing in the Premier League. Just trying to think what his name is. He went to Norwich and that. Oh, I'm good with names as well. Really talented boy. Can't think of his name. I want to say he's French boy, maybe. Really talented, ball traveller.
Oh, I remember him.
Like
I did go down to Norwich.
I'm sure he went to Norwich. Really good
Yeah.
player. And they did have good players. And I told the boys that. And obviously Terry, to me, I think if the game had finished 0-0 or 1-0 at Hamilton, I would have started in that game. But I think because it went 2-0, I think he just thought, oh, just keep him at the side, really. And obviously then we went 1-0 down, and the tide was starting to turn and the pressure was coming. And I think he called upon me because things were starting to go south, really, which, listen, I went on and tried my damnedest, really. But I think mad, because I don't know who it was, Scott Robertson or Owen Tudor-Jones had a chance to tackle right in the edge of the box and kind of never tackled, never put their foot in. It was kind of like, and then the ball went wide and it got cut back and the ball was in the back of the net, and I'm like, I still see it visually. And maybe Hibs fans would say, I wish you hadn't put yourself up to take a penalty, and I probably wish I never myself, but at the time, not many people wanted to take penalties, and as I said, I'd never took a penalty professionally at senior level in my career. You can go through. I used to take them off of the 18s, off of the reserves, and then for whatever reason, when I got to first team level, I never took any. But when he said, "Who's got the minerals? Who wants to take a penalty?" I was like, "I'll go first," because I wanted to lead by example. I wanted to. But listen, I get that when people listen to this, they'll be like, "I wish shut up and sat in the corner and no took one, but it's just the way it is. You step up. I believe that I was going to score and try and get the team off to a good start. And unfortunately, I never. And I still think back at this is how much detail and how much I think, because I'm a thinker. Is Jason Cummings obviously missed, left-footed. Liam Craig, left-footed, scored. And the two lefties that missed, the goalie saved them both to his right.
Mm-hmm. I think, to be fair though, I think it's
See, if I never went first, I would have changed my mind. It's mad that, isn't it?
Yeah, but to be fair, in hindsight, it's probably one of the better things that's happened to the club in
I know, but listen, it's
the last decade. But I didn't feel like that at the time.
I cannot tell you how sick you feel. Is like when I grew up a Hibs fan and I seen Alex McLeish's team go to the Championship, I never ever thought Hibs would ever be in the Championship. I know that sounds like too big for your boots, but growing up supporting a club, you never ever think the club would be a Championship team, and then when you get the opportunity as a young player to play, and then you come back, and I just never ever see. And maybe people will say, "Oh, it's ignorant," or you think these are too good or whatever, but it's no. I just never ever see the Hibs as a Championship club really, and when you're part of that. Going down, and then my wee boy Jackson was only. I'm just trying to think how old he would have been then. What year was it?
2014 we went down.
14. So Jackson would have been 4 at the time, and obviously had to go through the fans, and he's still at that naive stage where he just wanted to hang about at Easter Road afterwards and see the Seagulls picking up all the chip packets and get a kick in the net, and asked Tam and Joyce for a football so he could go out, and then he had to obviously see that, but. Maybe that's good for them going back to Easter Road now that the expectations are not too high.
Yeah, maybe. But after that game, had you already had the conversation with Teddy Butcher? When he kind of sat everyone down and said you're not getting kept on. Had that conversation already happened before the Hamilton playoff games?
No. We went in the next game day, whatever time. We're kind of no summoned, but it's quite a normal thing that. Even after success or whatever at the end of the season, the players might come in, they might have their night out on a Saturday or whatever, and maybe even a double session on a Sunday, and then you maybe come in and get your boots or your kind of pre-season plan, or maybe your heart rate monitor or whatever, do you know what I mean, to obviously record, or maybe nowadays boys have got apps and all that they maybe use that you can obviously like Stravas, etc., that you can download stuff or whatever, but you probably would normally go back in on a Monday as a contracted player or uncontracted player just to have some kind of clarity on where you stand or whatever. Some managers do, some managers don't. But most managers that I worked with kind of had us back in the kind of day after the last game of the season. So they conversations, I suppose for me, was expected. He never really said anything to me that I didn't expect. If he had said to me that he was going to offer me a new contract, I would have been gobsmacked really. So I kind of gave him, I could have, if I wanted to. Just said I'm just not going to bother going in and listening to him tell me that he doesn't want me, but I gave him his time and respect as the manager and went in, and even though I was prepared for it, still you go back to the car and drive out the gates thinking that you'll never ever play for the Hibs again, which was obviously the case. We obviously getting another opportunity, but you think that's the kind of done, and what's next and where you're going to go, and I suppose I've been privileged that I've always kind of been a contracted player and had kind of long-term contracts, but it's a vulnerable position when you kind of go into a summer holidays, not getting a wage and not knowing where your next club's going to be and who you're going to potentially go and do pre-season for, who's going to want you, where's it going to be, are you going to need to move your family? So it's people might say that's all right, you get paid quite well for it, but it's not as easy. It's not always as easy as that. So it's a difficult position for a player, I suppose, when you look back. At the time, you probably just deal with it, but thinking back, it's quite a vulnerable position when you go in a manager or a club tell you that your services are no longer needed and you need to go and find a new club. It sticks in the back of the throat. In a sad way, not in a better way, just in a sad way, because you obviously naturally want to play, don't you?
Yeah, of course. And then
you done in, right? You had enough.
Eh?
That you done in?
For me?
No.
No, Ryan.
No, we're all good, man. I'm enjoying this. Keep it going.
If I'm talking too much,
no, absolutely. Listen, it's all valuable stuff that you're saying. It's much needed as well. I think to address a lot of the Hibs fans and a lot of the listeners in the way that you have is brilliant. There's been a lot of questions answered so far that hopefully put an end to some of the views and the thoughts of certain sections of the Hibs fans. To be honest with you, you've addressed quite a lot so far, so You've been brilliant, but I'll leave you with Liam still. I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry.
He looked like he was going to start crying again, talking about the relegation, Ryan. That's why I thought he sat back.
You're bringing back
You were
memories,
going, I
man.
thought you were trying to hide the tears.
Craig's clearly had enough, but he's dropped off. But no, I'll actually fight his corner here. He just got back from New York this morning, so he's a wee bit jet lagged. He flew all the way back from the States to talk to you, Kevin. So hope you feel
Great commitment.
pretty
Isn't
privileged. But like you said, the opportunity to sign for Hibs rolls around again after a wee spell with Dundee. Are you kind of pinching yourself at this moment? Are you thinking, am I ever going to get rid of this football club?
Aye, well, I never had to get asked twice, really. It was, and I still remember my first day's training. Really, I hadn't even signed, and the snow was at Eastmains, so I didn't even think I was going to get to train, and they'd kind of the groundsman, Big Al Bain, and the staff had kind of sweeped I want to say maybe a third, maybe 2/3, maybe. Nah, not even a half. I wouldn't have thought. Maybe I'm maybe talking rubbish. I just remember it being quite a wee area. We obviously the kind of snow banked up at the side, and we went basically out and done boxes. What's happened there? Oh, just went blank there. You still hear me?
I can still hear you. Aye.
I will.
Aye, just went blank there. Just missing. Aye, so we went out and done like kind of light training really. But obviously going back to when I got that kind of text message off the physio to say that she had heard obviously that I was leaving Dundee, and that Alan had obviously asked to kind of for her to be the kind of middle party to see if I'd be interested. I actually met Stubbsy at the Fort in Starbucks. We went and had a coffee. I think I paid for them as well, so he's due me a coffee. Miserable bugger. Aye, so we had a coffee, and he just said, "Listen, we've got a really young team. Obviously, want to get promoted. It's tough with the teams that are obviously in the league. You're highly thought of within the building. Everybody speaks really highly of you. Brilliant with the players, young players. So listen, it's what we need really. The expectation of you playing all the time. You've not done that for the last period of time anyway. So as long as you're kind of comfortable with that." And I was like, "Listen, I'm going to retire anyway. So any game's a bonus, any involvement's a bonus, and if I can be involved and I can help, then when can I start really?" So as I say, the first day the snow was at Eastmains, and kind of went out and done a light session, and obviously going back and seeing Paul's, and obviously I never really knew Dave Gray's, etc. Like some of the lads, but Big Marv's, and obviously like I never even really knew Dylan's, etc. Or obviously even John. Like I played against John when John was at St Mirren, when I was at Dundee. So I never knew loads of the boys, to be fair, but it was it really gave the best way to describe my last period at Hibs, minus the Scottish Cup, was it kind of gave me my enjoyment back in football again, because all these young lads were, apart from Paul's and Louis and obviously Dave's and Big Daz, that were at different stages of their career, but when I think of Keats, Fivey, obviously Jace, Dylan's, John's, Hendo, it was brilliant for me, because they reminded me what we were like when we were young, and the energy and the camaraderie, the banter, the stupid stuff that they get involved in the changing room. And it just reminded me and Scotty and Deeks and Gaz and Whitties, and kind of our changing room as such. And I was the kind of Uncle T that they always used to call me. And I was always the one that kind of gave them advice that I used to ask people myself, like Nick Colgans and Gary Smiths and Stevie Glass, guys like that. And then all of a sudden I'm this guy that the boys are kind of asking for advice when it comes to buying cars or houses, or what should they do with their money, and blah blah blah. And it really gave me a buzz, just seeing how much energy they had, and how much drive they had as individuals, and to be a tiny part of that was a really enjoyable few months for me.
Well, Kev, just quickly
Yeah,
on
it was
that squad there as well. You mentioned Jace. What was the difference between him during your second spell and the third spell? Because he kind of obviously turned into a wee bit of an animal on the pitch in regards to goal scoring ability. And did you ever think he'd get himself to a World Cup and get closer to Messi than you did?
No. Listen, he's a great lad. He's an infectious character, and he's. I think Jace is. I know he was a boys' club player, and obviously he was at the Jambos, and he was a bit late and obviously coming in. And I think when I first seen Jace first time around, people were like, "Oh, he was at wherever he was at. Was he a Hutchie boy or Salvo boy or something like that?" Hutchie. Like he was quite raw and quite scruffy technically at times. You know what I mean? Like getting a hold of the ball and that, but swagger and belief and personality was in abundance, and real hard worker, hard trainer. So I always knew that he would get the best out of his ability, and he would probably overachieve because of his attitude to go. People just see Jace as the kind of joker and think that he's daft because that's obviously the way he is. But great lad. Loved my time with him. Gave me real energy as a kind of older player that was in the kind of knew that bridge was coming, that I was going to need to finish obviously one day, and kind of your career. You've had it, haven't you? You've kind of it's sad to think you never get to do it again. But seeing these young boys kind of on the start of theirs, and I'm not so sure I played any part, but if I gave them wee bits of advice along the way and helped them in any way, the way I conduct myself and how I trained, then hopefully it was good. But the hardest part for me was that when my kids, Jackson used to have, this is a bit banter by the way, I'm saying this quite serious. Messi Ronaldo dad used to be on Jackson's wall, and then for whatever reason it ended up Martin Boyle, Jason Cummings and dad, and I thought, fuck, I'm not having that. I'll take Messi Ronaldo dad, and then I'm not having Jason. So Jackson's actually went through a wee spell where Jace was his favourite player, so he's got a Cummings strip upstairs, which is nice. So great lads, and great to be a part of them.
Obviously, you were talking about a couple of the players that you shared the dressing room with. Must have been some laugh with Martin Boyle and Jason Cummings. Is there anything that you can remember that they got up to that you can share?
It's just daft as well. I've seen obviously the Grado stuff and all that, and just the good thing for me was that I was never part of any of the banter as such, and I'd like to think they had enough respect for me that I was never any part of the gags. But they were just the only way to describe the pair of them is just like a young Scotty Brown, just in about everything, constantly tying people's gear up, constantly putting them in the bath, deep heat, cutting socks up, tying laces together, just probably the stuff I'd expect off my 10-year-old, to be honest. But it's just the way they are, and it's so infectious and it's so refreshing because I've also been in changing rooms that's probably more dads and more older players, and you kind of come in, you work, you train, and there's less of that kind of mucking around as such. But it was John's an assassin as well at times, getting involved. So probably people see John as the kind of, because his careers went on and flourished and hit unbelievable heights and went to the kind of next level. People probably think of him as this quiet lad, but he was right in amongst it as well. So just great changing room, Fonts, obviously Paul and Louis, Dave. Built up a great relationship with Dave, Big Daz, love him to bits, sheer warrior. It was a great change room, to be fair, and it reminded me a lot of being on the other side there, as in me being one of them when we obviously all come through. It was quite refreshing to be part of it.
Of course, and it all culminates with the Scottish Cup final. And although you weren't in the the 18, it must have still been quite a surreal experience to be a part of a Hibs team taking on your former team in the Scottish Cup.
It was, and listen, it was an amazing day. It's a day the Sunday was probably more of a special day for me personally, to be on the team bus and going down Leaf Walk and getting to the bottom of it and the party at Easter Road and kind of up the town, and that probably for me on a selfish note was extra special to be part of that, because obviously the natural thing when you're a player and you don't get a strip and you're not involved in the game is it's a tough kind of tablet to stomach. It's a tough tablet to swallow. When you don't get that opportunity to be a part of it, every player will tell you, even the subs on that day that never got on the pitch, I'll still tell you it's amazing, and it's changed a lot of people's lives for the players. You know what I mean? Like legends for the rest of their life. You could argue off of one game, which is a surreal kind of scenario to be involved in. But for me, for my kind of agenda really was driven off trying to be as supportive as I possibly could to the players, which was a difficult one because it was my dream. I was desperate to be involved. It looked like I probably wouldn't be, and I'd like to think it, but without driving my agenda, it hopefully puts me in the light of how I'd like to be perceived. Is that Dylan McGee had come off against Wraith on the Friday night, I think it was, after 20-25 minutes. and never trained kind of all week, and he was unsure about playing. He'd asked me for advice, and I'd said, listen, I do what let the fans do, and I do what let the manager do, and I do what let the players do. And I'm like, Dylan, such a talented player, one of the most talented I've played with, by the way, with serious baller, Dylan. But he had injury problems like myself, and I'm not so sure he was sure about playing. And I knew, doing the maths, that it was only me and Danny Hanlon that were 19th and 20th, and Danny hadn't played. So there was every chance that I would have been obviously on the bench if Dylan hadn't played. I might have played, I might not have. He might have played Marv, he might not have played Dylan, whatever it may be, because obviously Fivey and Dylan played, didn't they? Obviously John and Hendo obviously off the kind of top of the diamond. So I could easily been selfish, but I'd like to think I wasn't that. Us players are selfish because it's just a natural thing. It's a team sport, but it's an individual game. You always look after yourself. But I had to find a way, which was difficult, to be supportive to the players and put my fan hat on and kind of put my selfishness, you want to be involved and just be a good teammate to try and give the best advice. And my advice to Dylan and Cameron House was, if I was you, I would play with a broken leg, and if I have to come off after 10 minutes, it's worth the risk. Because it was so important to the team. And until you try it, until you take the risk, you never know. And thankfully, he took that risk because he come off with, I think, sore groins or some sort of muscle injury on the Friday night at Falkirk. I'm sure it was a Friday night game. Didn't he quote me on that? I think it was.
I think it was actually.
And they scored last minute, didn't they? In injury time. And then the Scottish Cup final was obviously the Saturday, which was the following week. And Dill Hart, I didn't think Dill trained, to be honest. But a brilliant player, great lad, love him to bits. Still obviously speak to him. And he was really important for the team that day, which was more important than me being selfish and not giving the best advice. So I spent a bit of time with him in Cameron House on that Friday night, saying that if I was you, I would risk everything to play in the game tomorrow.
Yeah, of course. And just when Dave Gray's goal goes in, we all know as fans that haven't played for Hibs what we were thinking. To be honest, I just couldn't believe it. But as someone who is grown up with Hibs and has played for Hibs, on 3 occasions, or in 3 spells, sorry, not on 3 occasions. You played a lot more games than that. But what are you thinking? Are you just thinking, well, this is it? This is dream come true stuff?
I cannot tell you how surreal it was, which is probably the same for you. When Andy Halliday scored, I was right behind it. Our bench was obviously to the right, the Hampden entrance, the tunnel, and Rangers was obviously at the left. So where I was sat behind kind of the subs, Andy Halliday's left foot shot, and obviously celebrates a bit like how Scotty kind of celebrates, where he just kind of stood as if like, I'm the man type thing. And a really good mate of mine, Andy. And when that went in, I thought, it's just typical life of being a Hibby, really. But the only thing I can remember when Dave scored was disbelief, really. Like lost for words, like the emotion. It was like a pinch moment. It was a surreal moment, and obviously the aftermath, like I'd said earlier, was the kind of mad rush to get on the pitch, obviously, and God forbid anyone got hurt or whatever. But it was just such an ecstatic moment, really, for everybody involved, and emotions kind of took over, didn't they? But my first thing was to try and get to my wee boy. So when the kind of pitch, when Sunshine on Leaf come on, I was stood with obviously Jackson. And Carson obviously was just a nipper. He was born 2012, so he was just a tot, really. But Jackson's obviously a wee bit older. He was 2010. So, and then my dad, and I managed to get tickets for some of my mates, my best mates down in Peebles, and his dad that obviously were on the Green Tree bus that went to Skull Cup 91. So to think 25 years later that you were stood at Hampden, albeit I understand I wasn't part of the squad, but to have played in the 2 derbies, to have played in the quarter-final, to have sat on the bench in the semi-final, I felt like I'd played some sort of wee tiny part in the journey, and to stand there to watch family, kids, and every Hibby alike to celebrate that day in May was extra special. And I'm just waffling, really, but the Sunday for me was to see mates in the crowd singing all the Hibs songs back at them on Leaf Walk, kind of going up the bus, on the bus going up, and seeing mates with tears in their eyes screaming at you, singing Hibs songs kind of on the way up for Leaf is a moment I'll cherish forever, really.
Amazing. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to the parade. I was working on the Sunday. Honestly, I was. I tried hell for leather on the
You're one
Saturday
of the
night.
Hibs fans that give me abuse on Twitter, aren't you? That never go.
No comment.
On that accounts, man.
No, I
I'm
tried hell
blocking
for
you tonight
leather
as
on
soon
the
as you give me
Saturday
abuse.
night. tried to get it off on the Sunday, but my work wasn't budging, and I was like, I was gutted. But the night out on the
It's
Saturday was good. But I would imagine your
day
night
was,
out was better.
it was bedlam, like up the town, obviously. But and then obviously Sunday we obviously went back to Easter Road to start with. But on the Saturday when we got back, was it Sunday it was, sorry, for the parade. Before we went back to Easter Road, my mate, good mate of mine, I've given him pretty much all my Hibs memorabilia. Obviously we got our strip. And Charlotte, they're actually a bit older now. Charlotte will be 14/15. And they do, my mate will listen to this, Xander, so he's got pretty much like a lot of my Hibs strips. Really good mate of mine, Jennifer and Xander. And they had waited, like every Hibs fan, but they'd waited down at Leaf Links for obviously the bus to come. And Xander had sent me a photo of Charlotte, distraught. Like, I've never seen her face like it. It was red raw, proper Hibbies, like, they never miss a game. And I said to her, like, listen, and we'll obviously be able to probably confirm this for you, but I'll probably stick in the back of his throat a wee bit emotionally. But I said to him, listen, I'm on my way, the bus is going back to Easter Road soon. Meet me at Easter Road. And I gave Charlotte my strip because I had my strip in my boot. Because obviously I still got a strip, obviously. So they've still got I don't know if it was the only one, because I'm sure Tam and Joyce would have made two, obviously, but obviously relevant to people that I never played, but a special thing for them. And they've got it pride of place in their kind of, I think it's as you walk up the stairs, they've got it kind of pride of place. I think it's kind of overtook a few other ones that I gave them, but to see people like my mate and obviously Jennifer that I've not so much grew up with, but they helped me find my first house in Galberston. Been kind of every single Hibs game that I've played in, and then same with her daughters, and then to give them to meet her and get a wee cuddle off her at the end of the game, and to see her wee face happy was extra special.
Amazing. And I think we can all probably I can speak for everyone when I say it was the best day in all of our lives. I hope that my wife isn't listening, because if she is, then the wedding was great, Megan, and the birth of the two bairns was great, but cup final was
Doesn't
better.
beat the day, no.
No, it really doesn't. But just before I hand you back over to Sean, I meant to touch on this earlier on, but I was watching the Time for Heroes DVD just the other night there, and you were talking about the replay against Hearts at Easter Road, and you said if it came down to a football match, we would have won it. If it came down to a fight, we would have won it. I just want to know how many of the Hearts team could you have battered that night?
Sometimes you just feel, I just sometimes think you've just got there's always, when these big games come round, there's always a feeling, I felt like that in Old Firm games when I kind of, and I was lucky enough to have a good record in them, and probably my derby records maybe not as good, especially obviously at Tynecastle, but I always just felt there was times you go to Tynecastle and play against Craig Levine's teams, and you just felt like even if you played at your best, you sometimes come unstuck and they'd maybe bully you a wee bit, and the crowd would be on top, and naturally, like, tough games against good Hearts teams, I've always had respect for Hearts, and it's Tynecastle a difficult place to go, but for whatever reason, that team, that personality within the group gave me that feeling that we could run faster than them, we could run harder than them, we could pass quicker than them, and having guys like Stokesy, listen, I gave Stokesy a bit of a hard time, but an unbelievable talent, and I get how important he was that day in May, but when you do have people like Stokesy, albeit I think he was quite inconsistent, which is a fair comment to make, probably one of the most talented players I've ever played with, another talent that was wasted, really. But when you play with people like him and Jason and guys that can do things off the cuff, and John, and can make things happen in a blink of an eye, it gives you some sort of belief. And I played with loads of players like that. And there's players that have just got that X factor, Rivalries. They've just got, and by the way, they can be anonymous for 70, 80 minutes of the game, and then just a blink of an eye, they can flick it round the corner, set or score, or make a clever dart and run at the near post like Jace does, obviously, early doors, and then have the quality to kind of side foot it in the net when it comes at speed off of Dave. And I remember like it was just the exact passed the ball out to Marv or popped it back to Marv, and Marv popped out to Dave, and Dave kind of whipped it in, and Jace gets across the front. And to me, it didn't matter how long that game went, we were going to win. And then it goes back to special moments. Another picture that I've got in my games room is kind of doing Sunshine on Leaf. Albeit I never had my strip on at the time because I had my big warm-up jacket because I was a rubber dub by the time the game had finished. But same again, mates in the crowd sitting in the main stand and get to sing Sunshine on Leaf to them and see them with their hands above their head is, listen, that no matter what Hibs fan gives you a bit of stick, but hopefully people that listen can hear that you care about the club, and days like that are days that no matter what people say on social media or people that maybe didn't quite tickle your fancy or whatever, they can never take the days away from you.
And it's the days like that make the Hamiltons at home and the last minute equalisers and last minute winners that we concede, that's what makes it all worth it. And I think it's a great place for me to pass over to Sean and wrap up for this episode. You're on mute, Sean.
Terrible. Just ignore that even happened. I'm still concerned at the fact that I dropped off, that the recording might not even be there. So let's just pray and hope that that's there, because we're not going through all this again, that's for sure. No, that I've not enjoyed it, Kev, but we've taken up part of my wife, so you'll probably be getting in trouble after. One of the things we always do on the Ramble, he'll be annoyed if I don't name and shame him. John McIntosh, answer his question first every week, and it stays the same. Win, lose or draw at Easter Road, home and away. The first question that we get in is, what are you having for dinner, or what have you had for dinner?
We had meatball bake the night. I like a wee pasta bake, meatballs. The kids like meatballs, so we normally if we have a kind of, so we have different dinners through the week. We have training dinners, which is kind of chickeny wrappy type, ricey type stuff, because the boys. So I need to pick the boys up at 3:35 for school, back down to the house, which were only 2 minutes for the school. Quick chicken wrap, change for Hibs, and then straight down to East Mains. They need to be at East Mains for 5 o'clock. So, and I pick up Jackson's teammate at the Braid. So I'm just a taxi service. So we call footy dinner when we go to Tesco's. We call footy dinners, and we have. But like a Tuesday's the one night of the week that we don't have any academy, and the boys didn't train, obviously. So I like an old fashioned dinner, like kind of meatball bake or mince and tatties or steak pie or something like that. So and now I've retired, I can eat what I want.
I'm coming for Trent myself. I know that traffic up Trent High Street's an absolute nightmare at 5 o'clock.
I go the back way. I go the Ormiston way, but it's brutal.
Alistair McGregor was wanting to know which is the best and the worst hairstyle for your younger days at Easter Road, because there was some belters.
I'd say it's funny because when I look back at pictures, I think, wow, now that I'm turning 40 and I've got 2 young kids that want to, every time they go to the barbers, they ask for a different haircut. Skin fade one week, they want lines in it the next, and they want colour in it. But I have to say, my blonde mullet was off the scale. Like, it was, listen, it served me well when I was 18, 19. Just say that.
Your parents no asking for that.
By the way, no fairly got any here. I wish I had some made back.
Go to the barbers. Can I get the Kevin Thomson, please?
Funny, it's funny. So me and Scotty used to go down to Granton when Scotty had his red stripe. My sister used to, well, she still does work at Standard Life, and a good mate of hers, wee guy called Russell Big Hibby, his wife Jennifer, and by the way, she's never cut her hair since we were 18, 19, so you're talking like, what, 22, 23 years ago. Scotty used to drive a wee 52 plate Punto, a wee kind of silvery, kind of creamy kind of Punto that he used to drive when he was at Hibs. And we used to go over to Granton and meet my sister after work, and she'd take us to Jennifer's, and Jennifer used to do the daft red stripe through Scotty's hair, and I used to obviously get the I don't even know what to call it.
You used to think the cap through.
I used to put the yeah, she used to put the lotion on obviously my hair, and then she would cut her hair in that, and I thought we genuinely walked out that place thinking that we were the boys, and then looking back, we maybe weren't.
I can't even sit there and slate you, because as you can tell, I've probably had a few dyes in my hair at one point as well. I had the cap on a few times in the past. To be fair, Kev, we've actually, without even realising it, all the topics and stuff that we got questions on, we've answered quite a lot of it. So there's not as many questions as you might think, and then we'll move on to the teammate side. But Craig Bain came in, and I don't know if that name even rings a bell with you, but he wants to know if you remember playing 2v2 on the 18th at Peebles Golf Course, dodging all the golfers.
Aye. So I got brought up in Peebles with Bainey. Good golfer he is. Him and my mates were kind of all golfers, so we got brought up in a wee kind of quiet bit in Peebles just behind the golf course. So childhood memories as such. And they probably maybe not so much Bainey, but me, Bainey, my best mate Fenton, who's still my best mate to this day, Jamie Fenton. We grew up with a group of brothers called the Thompsons, Martin, Darren, and Barry, and they had a daughter called Donna. I went to school with Donna, but Martin was younger than me. Darren was the same age as my sister. Barry was a couple of years older than us. So me, Fenton, and Craig kind of grew up in an era where the Thompsons were the kind of they were the boys in the street, and we done what they told us to do. Really. I went from kind of like being the wee runt really that always got chucked in goals to trying to work it out really, and I wanted to be outfield. I wanted to play with the big boys. So if I had to play with the big boys, I had to stick up for myself. And eventually, they kind of all wanted to be in my team. So I must have been doing something right.
There was quite a few questions on this, so I'm going to watch how I word it. It'll make sense in a sec. Don't worry, it's nothing bad. Obviously, you go to the games with your laddies quite a lot. Hibs games as well at Easter Road quite a lot, and they're season ticket holders. They're in beside the ultras, diehard Hibbies, yourself, Hibby as well. See when you're on pundit duty, whether it be for Rangers TV or BT back in the day or whatever, are your laddies giving you stick for referring to Rangers as we?
Aye, the boys kind of get it's hard because I've had the boys at Ibrox, and obviously I get treated really well, and they like that. Obviously, when they see Dad get kind of appreciation and you get treated well, they probably think that Dad's done all right, if you know what I mean. But it's listen, I played for Rangers for just under 4 years, and I worked in the academy for 4 years. So when you're kind of employed and you're working for the club, but like I'll never ever change my kind of alliances just because a Hibs fan gives me a bit of stick. It's the same. I'll never ever change to being a Rangers fan just because I played for the club, or be disrespectful to Dundee or disrespectful to Middlesbrough. It's not what I believe in. But as it just goes back to that bit that you cannot please everybody, and it's hard because sometimes you maybe say we even when you're working for BT or for like maybe TNT or maybe even Sky or BBC when you've done it, and it's not through trying to be disrespectful of that. It's probably just a wee
Out of respect more than anything else.
punctuation error. But it's funny because listen, see when Ryan Porteous got sent off, I was working for Rangers TV that night, and I said this is what makes me laugh when it comes to opinion, and I'm not trying to like get anyone to change theirs because it is what it is, but it's why we kind of get too bothered about it. I'd said I know Ryan. He was a young player. I told all my mates that Ryan was the next best one when I was in there. He used to come in on his kind of Easter holidays and that. Plus, I worked in the academy when I went back with Alan. Obviously, I used to go in the night time and help the 01s at the time, which was Lee Makel's team. And I said to all my mates, as they naturally do, who's the next one coming to the academy? I was like, there's a boy called Porteous. I says he can handle the ball, he's aggressive, he's powerful, good lad. So I spent a bit of time with Ryan because sometimes like Stubbs was quite big on the boys that didn't play, trained, and the boys that played done a kind of recovery on a Monday. So obviously, if I never played, I would kind of be out with kind of the boys that never played, plus a few of the younger ones. And I'd like to think I was really respectful in how I portrayed Ryan's tackle on Joe Aribo that night. Well, I had Rangers fans tweet me to say Thompson showed his true colours the night. Supporting name, and I also had tweets from Hibs fans saying Thompson's a fucking hunting cunt. He's a hunter. So it just shows you how different people can, for the same comments and the same way I try to do things and be respectful, is like you're pissing against the wind really with some people. So it's no, and listen, I go to the club really regularly. They always invite me back. They always look after us. You know, put me up in the suites. They give me opportunities to do the TV. And they've been brilliant with me, people internally. I've always looked after me since my kind of career finished. But it's not to say that's because Hibs didn't do that. I buy my season tickets for the kids. I didn't ask for any special treatment. I never asked Rangers or Dundee or Middlesbrough for special treatment. If I get invited back, I'd love to go. I was at Ibrox just for Jimmy Bell's tribute dinner just a couple of Fridays ago, invited back. If I was ever to be invited back to Easter Road to the training centre, listen, I'm in the training centre 3-4 nights a week at times. And I always get greatly received by the parents, do you know what I mean, the staff, and my boys love it. And as I said numerous times, they're on a wee dream the same as me. And if they're proud of Dad, and when I get treated well and go and people respect you, great. If people think that you're not so good and you've maybe said wrong or you've done something wrong, then I didn't mean it in any bad harm. So I just listen. It's not an easy gig doing the commentary, and to be honest, doing Rangers v Hibs or Hibs v Rangers or doing the type of games, you could argue I'm almost on a hiding to nothing, and whatever I say, I'm not going to win. But it's the harsh reality is I'm working for Rangers TV and no Hibs TV. Do you know what I mean? So it's, if you watch any club channel, it's quite club orientated. Do you know what I mean? But same again, even if I'm pretty sure if I went on and criticised Rangers too much and slagged all the Rangers players off and the manager doesn't know what he's doing, I'm not so sure Rangers would be back on the phone to give me a gig for the next commentary game. So but I suppose a Hibs fan would expect you to do that, wouldn't they?
Aye, like you say, well, we've said throughout, you can't appease everybody. Do you know what I mean? It's just about sticking to your morals more than anything else. Last couple of questions from social media, and then we'll move into the last segment, which will be teammates, and then we can all get cracking and watching Scotland Northern Ireland, which obviously was the same as your debut. What was the best piece of advice that you received as a player, and what's the best piece of advice you could give to someone?
The best piece of advice. Oh, listen, I had loads, and I'd hate to leave anyone out, but it's the one bit that stuck in my memory would be from Walter Smith. He told me that all right's no good enough, and I live that by life now. One of my first main meetings with him as a player and to the manager, and he had a gruesome reputation really. So when he called you into the manager's office at the start of training and come and see me after training, there was naturally a bit of fear for your life, never mind anything else. But he sat me down after a few months I'd been at the club and asked me how I was doing, and I was like, I think I'm doing all right. And he gave me the stare of death and told me that unfortunately this club, all right's no effing good enough, like that, straight at me. And I suppose it's how I tried to live my life off the back of that, to try and do even more. And I just done a question and answer just recently down at Preston Pans for one of my mates. One of the dads at Hibs is the manager down there, so they'd asked me if I'd do them a favour. So I went down just a couple of Sundays ago, and I'd like to think I was a hard-working player and good attitude and always on time, never late. Do you know what I mean? One of the first in, always one of the last to leave. And if I could do it again, I'd work harder. That would be the one bit of advice. And I say it to my kids all the time. And I was a hard-working player, but I still believed I could have done more. Now that I've retired, I'm never going to have that opportunity again. But if I was given a bit of advice to anyone, and I just said it to Jackson's coach last night, I am that person that leaves no stone unturned. So if I was given that advice to any young player, I'd be like, give it your all. If Tony Mowbray or Walter Smith or Gordon Strachan or Bobby Williamson had said to me, go and climb trees and it'll make you better at football, I would have went and climbed trees. I say it to my boys all the time, like, if you want to be good players and you want to have a dream and you want to get to the telly one day, you want to play for the Hibs, you have to be working harder than everybody that's around you. And unfortunately, when you get to a certain environment and you get to a certain level, everybody works hard. Everybody's got the bit between their teeth. Everybody wants to be better than everybody. But to get there, you need to be working harder than everybody else. And to stay there, you need to continue to do it. So that would be my motto to anyone that wanted advice. And I suppose that would be the kind of, and that was reiterated to me from my dad all the time. It was never a bad pass or bad shot or missed a chance or gave the ball away or missed a tackle. It was always like, make sure you give your all.
The last one circles kind of around a theme that we kind of got a lot of questions on, and you've touched on it throughout, but we've not really spoke about any particular examples. It was more about things that you maybe would have potentially done differently throughout your career, or things that you wish you'd maybe achieved that you weren't able to achieve. I guess that comes into the regrets aspect of it. Is there anything that maybe sticks out?
I think if I could go back, I would. When I first hurt my knee at Hibs, I was a young lad that had the phone, that was texting too many people and up the town all the time and desperate to get to Magaluf in the summer with my mates, and it probably took my eye off the ball a wee bit and probably never had the right support mechanism. Listen, physios were brilliant, club were brilliant, but the resources and the actual support mechanism around young players at that time was quite limited compared to what it will be now. It's just the era that we come through, and so it's not any bad blip on anyone's kind of how, like, the care that we were given, but to flip that 3 or 4 years forward, when I hurt my knee at Rangers, I had like kind of 1-to-1 physio treatment and got a far better, more experienced surgeon to do my operation, etc. So I would say that going back to 19, hurting my knee for the first time, I probably lacked a wee bit of professionalism, and I probably lacked a wee bit of effort when it come to doing the gym work and going into, and obviously the gym at Easter Road wasn't a nice fancy gym. It was a gym that was up in one of the lounges, so it had carpets and that in it. Why is that an excuse? It's not an excuse. It's just what it was. And I had to sit on the bike to warm up, look out the windows and watch all my mates jumping in their cars to go to training wherever they were going. It was breaking my heart, and it never gave me any enthusiasm. It never gave me any motivation, and it was too easy to go up there and sit on my phone and just wait for the day to pass, really, to then go back down and put a bag of ice on my knee and then think about getting home and getting a game of pool with Scotty or just getting away from the club, really. Do you know what I mean? Because it was tough to. The only thing I knew was playing football, and obviously it had been taken away from you. So I don't know if that's kind of went round the doors a wee bit, but the international stuff obviously is another regret. Kind of like not playing enough. Do you know what I mean? Probably like going on the like summer trips and maybe put myself out there a wee bit more to maybe risk maybe my body a wee bit more, and maybe suffer for it. I don't know. Like I suppose you never know in hindsight. But the one bit I would say was if I could go back to 18, 19 when I first hurt my knee, and for that 11 months that I spent in the gym, there was a time the penny dropped, and I had Dougie Fowler and Tony come in, and I started to see a wee bit light at the end of the tunnel. I would say probably more through just time rather than like rushing and doing hard yards in the gym. But eventually the penny dropped, and listen, I got back to hopefully being an elite player. But if I could go back to that maybe first 3 or 4 months when I spent more time on my phone in the gym than I did actually doing any gym work, would be one of the small regrets I've got.
We'll move on to the teammate section of it, so we'll fire through that as well. First one we kick off with is initiation song, whether it be what was your one when you joined clubs, and then a follow up to that is the best and worst initiation performance that you've seen.
Oh, I've seen a few, but I've never actually, believe it or not, I've never sung in my whole
Got away
career.
with it.
I've never ever sung. I've never been asked to sing. I got, I think when I went back under Alan, we were at a hotel, I think the Marriott maybe, and I think we were having pre-match or whatever, or having dinner at night time, and I think Keats or somebody went, "Is Tomo singing?" Like kind of sheepishly because he was scared to ask me, and I was like, "Really?" I said, "I've played more games for this club than you've been here," so I was like, "I just third time round really," and nobody asked me, to be fair. I've seen a few crackers, to be fair. I've seen a few good ones, but I'm just trying to think. Like probably initiation songs probably kicked in more at Middlesbrough. I played with a lad down at Middlesbrough. What's his name? Muzzy Carayal. He was the fastest guy in the world. Winger, black lad. I think he was a London boy. Played for Middlesbrough. Him and Justin Hoyt were the two fastest guys I've ever seen in my life, and they both. Justin Hoyt obviously played with Arsenal, Sunderland, they're just rapid. But Muzzy's got a bit about him. Like he's got swag. So he sung one of the R&B songs or whatever, up in the stool with a bottle of water, and probably then social media and videos and putting them on social media and tagging clubs in and etc. wasn't a big thing. But if anyone ever had a video of him doing what he done, I'd like to tell you what song he sung, but I'm rubbish when it comes to songs, and it's not really my forte. So, but he was sensational. And then the worst ones, I think we've all seen them. I can't think of any specific player to throw anyone under the bus, but there's definitely been a few shockers. But to be honest, if I had sung, I would have been the worst, guaranteed.
We would normally come in and ask the best mate that you've had throughout football, but I think that kind of goes without saying. It's well documented and stuff like that. So I'm going to replace it with any big time shouts. So what's the biggest big time shout that you've heard?
Big Gaz used to love, and I love Big Gaz to bits. But he loved a few. But I think that Celtic group that we used to play when we were first broke through, the kind of Larson, Lennon, Alan Thompson, Sutton, obviously, they were horrible players to play. But listen, brilliant players and real admiration for them. But they were horrible buggers to you on the pitch. They used to cash you off, call you wee skint buggers and that, and things like that. And I think Scotty's on record maybe saying that one of them maybe said if they want, they can come and do their gearding for them or whatever. I'm not so sure that's worked out quite the right way now, is it?
No.
But they were Robbie Keane. I think I'm sure Robbie Keane in the Old Firm game called me a skint CUNT. I think when I was there.
Was that before or after you went through him?
I think that was maybe after the first time I went through him, and then that's why I got him again. But Listen, I wouldn't mind being a tenner behind him right enough, but that Celtic team, brilliant players, and they were a proper team, like real proper players. But like Paul Lambert was like, for me, the class act. He was like the never said much, brilliant player. But your Lennies, your Suttons, your Alan Thompsons, they like the kind of Scotty Brown was his dream made in heaven. That just to be able to have running mouth arguments with him the whole game. But I wasn't one of the type of players but you get caught in maybe the aftermath, or you kind of see it or sense it or hear it. But they were probably the ones that tried to knock out that young Hibs team doing a couple pegs.
Who is you were obviously quite known during your Hibs career as well, but mainly through your Rangers career for your hard tackling and going through players and stuff like that as well. So kind of links into this one. Who do you think that you've played with was probably the biggest hard man? Someone you'd want in your corner if you went through somebody the wrong way and there was a fight on the pitch? Other than Big Daz McGregor, of course.
I played with Andre Beakey when I was at Middlesbrough. I don't know if you can remember him. He was and then I was talking about fights earlier that I never seen that many. I have seen quite a few fights, to be fair, in different clubs that I've been at. But there's a guy called Nicky Bailey at Middlesbrough, London lad, great lad,
baldy-headed fella.
baldy-headed lad, London, proper Cockney, and he would fight his granny, and I seen him and Andre Beakey go. They were like two gorillas, man, just going smashing into each other, man. They were like, "Whoa, so powerful!" It was like the big chest and that sticking out as wide as gorillas, man. They were like big monsters, man. And Tony Mowbray was the manager at the time, but I actually ended up like, I don't know how I managed to end up somewhere in the middle of it or somewhere trying to sort it out, but I was like a fish out of water involved in that fiasco. Like, but they were both great lads. Big Andre was the most laid back guy in the world, Big BK, but he was one that if you I'd imagine if you got into a fight in the tunnel, like when I was at Kelty, we had a guy played with us called Dougie Hill, who's just moved around the road for us, big Hibby as well.
He's not as a hard
Big
man,
Doug
Dougie, aye.
He's a diamond of a boy, Big Doug. Like, and we weren't sure about him when we first got the job, and we asked him to come in, and I put my neck on the line a wee bit because I thought he might have told me to bugger off, and I said to him, "Listen, you need to come and see us. We need to see you. You're obviously." I think he was maybe a year younger than me, Big Duke, at the time. So we were like, "Oh, come in." But I played with some strong players, and I was strong myself. And listen, I would have a go, of course I would, because it's in your nature. But he was an animal. And I know he's quite handy with his fists as well. So if I was, whenever I was a Kelty manager, I got a bit of stick up at Elgin off a wee group of fans that had been in hospitality. They were slaughtering me the whole game. And obviously, they type of games in League Two, you hear every shout. And Big Duke was on the bench that day, and I turned around and Geordie's like, "Go and tell them to F off." And I was like, "Can I?" Like, I just had to keep on biting my lip because it's not what I believe in. I wasn't going to react. And Big Duke said to me, "Gaffer, whenever you want, I'm ready. F off." I could have just threw Big Duke into the crowd and it would have been game over.
What is the worst shout that you've heard come for the sidelines that you can obviously put on air, whether it be during your Hibs career, Rangers, down south, or even
that was sectarian up there. Like they called me a Hun the whole game really. But obviously Thompson, you Hun, CUNT, and listen, I've got no problem with people name calling. It didn't make any difference to me, to be honest. It was annoying, obviously, because it's not like being at a big ground like Easter Road and you're standing on the sideline. And there might be somebody behind the dugout giving you a stick. I'm sure loads of managers at Easter Road have had it. And obviously that can escalate when the teams maybe don't know doing particularly well and the manager comes under. I'm sure Lee Johnson probably felt the wrath of the Easter Road crowd quite a few times. And it's natural. So it didn't bother me. It bothered me more that rather than just calling me a prick or call me a bald bugger or an ugly bugger or fat or whatever he wanted to call me, but because he was calling me a Hun, that annoys me, that because I never got brought up in stuff like that, and I wouldn't call anyone else it. I wouldn't be disrespectful to a Hearts fan. I wouldn't be disrespectful to a Celtic fan just because I played for clubs that are rival. It's not what I believe in. I go to my local Tesco's. They're all it's food jambos, and they all bounce around dials waiting for me to come in when the jambos have won, and I cannot wait to see them when the Ivies have won, and that's what football is for me. And listen, I want to win the same as everybody else, but I didn't live my life to be disrespectful to people.
You put that well. I just want to quickly say, all of us on this podcast are very against the sectarian nature of the Scottish game just now. So it's actually really good that you've highlighted that, and there's no place in this game for it at all. Either way, whether it's Protestant, Catholic, whatever. That's not what football's about. So it's a good point you've made there.
No, you're right. Listen, I love Rival. Then I'll never take it away, and fans get to do what they want. But just hate the other clubs. Great. It doesn't need to go along their lines. And it's the same. Like I say to all my mates when Hearts got relegated, I'm like, listen, you play for Hibs to play in derbies. Like I couldn't understand it. Why you wouldn't want a good Rangers team, a good Celtic team, a good Hearts team, a good Aberdeen team, two good Dundee teams, a good Hibs team. So I mean, like, maybe everybody else maybe doesn't want that, but that's what I would love my kids to come into, and what I would like to support as an ex-player and watch games every week. And naturally, you want the club that you support to do well, but listen, it annoys me when people go, and even like the fighting and the aftermaths and kind of all that trouble and that it just doesn't float my boat. But listen, you're not going to change people, unfortunately. It's just the way it is.
Son, on a bit of a lighter note, the best and worst dressed that you've ever came across? Some sketchy clothes that Gaz's wore, if that's for sure.
The best is easy. Actually, probably both. Pedro Mendes is easily the best. Just Mr. Dolce Gabbana, we used to call him, dripping head to toe. He was like a Dolce Gabbana model every time he turned up to training. To be fair, I've knew Scotty for what 25 years, is that right? 25 years. I've never seen him wear anything other than a pair of jeans and trainers and a t-shirt. That's all he wears. All that money he's got, and he must just spend on jeans and trainers. I'm waiting on him buying a jacket or a hoodie. But the worst would easily be, or one of the worst that I can think of off the tip of my tongue would be Sasha Papac. Horrendous. Big sash. Big woolly jumper every day.
Gives a vibe. He definitely gives a vibe.
Terrible man as well.
Like my Under Armour kind of thing now. It was like big woolly jumper. Probably more money than a horse can shite, and he turns up in a big woolly jumper every day.
What about the best and worst trainers then?
Best trainer, probably. Listen, we were all good trainers, to be fair, but I would say I'd maybe say Steve Davis as the kind of standout that was just relentless, really. Fit as a fiddle. Well, obviously, unfortunately, had to retire through injury. But brilliant player.
There's a reason he got
and a
that
class
age as well,
act.
the way. Come on, I mean.
140 caps for Ireland, and I get his reputation up here through obviously the side that the Hibs didn't like. I understand that, but like if you're a football fan, and by the way, you'd never see Steve Davis involved in any controversy or anything. Just a class act, proper, humble, down to earth, great lad, but brilliant trainer. 9 out of 10 every single day. Technically unbelievable, so clever, and just like non-stop effort. Just a Rolls Royce of a player, really. Worst trainer, who's a brilliant player, loved playing with him, warrior, but hated training, would probably be Barry Robson when I was at Middlesbrough. He hated football, but brilliant player, warrior, prolific in the Championship for Middlesbrough. Probably done the best out of all the Scottish players. They went down there, suited them to a T, hustle and bustle, fighting for it. Great lad, but hated football, hated training. Just used to come down if we were mucking about with the ball at the start, and he'd just pick up the ball and kick it away. Almost felt as though like he was like the old grumpy man every day in training. But when it come to game day, wow, what a competitor! But I wouldn't say he would. I'm pretty sure if he answered that question himself, he wouldn't say he was the world's best trainer.
Last couple from us then. Biggest teacher's pet that you came across. Now feel free to out anyone that you managed that was bigger than anyone that you played with if you want.
Teacher's pet.
And if you can't think of one, I'm just going to assume it was you, Kev.
Nah, I wouldn't say I was a teacher's pet. Like, I wouldn't even say I spoke to managers that often, to be honest, unless I was summoned, really. Morning kind of like type thing. But I was a quiet lad, me. I just kind of kept myself to myself. A boring bugger, really. I just kind of, one of the lads, but I wasn't. I was never at the front. You'd never ever see me like being at the front of celebrations or picking up trophies, or it just wasn't me. I delve over the limelight. I can waffle and talk and use as much banter as you can, but I'm no one to be at the forefront. Like, who would I say? Teacher. I didn't know if I really played with a teacher's pet. Charlie Adams obviously gets a bit of stick, doesn't he? Off other players when he's been, but I'm not so sure he wasn't really Walter's pet really, because Walter got rid of him in the end, didn't he? He went to obviously Blackpool, so I'm unstuck in that one. I'm not sure I've got a name for you, but definitely my Hibs group when we first come through, I wouldn't say there was any really to Bobby. There was none really to Tony. Rangers, I wouldn't say that Walter was just not that type of manager really to have that type of relationship. It was quite a kind of manager stroke player relationship. Tony, but Middlesbrough, Gordon. I've not got one for you.
I'll be shocked if you didn't have one of these then for me, especially considering some of the boys you grew up with and played with at Hibs. Who was, or even in your second and third spell, you're the biggest rebel that you came against? There's somebody that would just wouldn't listen to anything that they were told. Quality player, but just wouldn't listen.
Well, listen, Riordan and O'Connor were a bit like that, but people have decent guys as like they didn't train well. They were brilliant trainers, right? Loved football. Like first on the training pitch, mucking about, desperate to shoot, mucking about, half volleys, overhead kicks, like just infectious when it comes to football. Brilliant teammates, and by the way, really, really talented. Total different, big guys, powerhouse, raw and robust, and what a player. And Deeks that maybe a wee bit more finesse and like unbelievable finisher, but both great lads and great trainers. Like people would think, oh, they were disruptive. They weren't. No at all. And I would always vouch for them every time I do interviews. Great lads, but I would say Stokesy was probably the biggest, the one that I played with. I couldn't believe how much. And listen, I don't want to be critical of Stokesy, but I couldn't believe how much talent he had and how little effort he put in when he played for Hibs. And if he gave an extra 1%, he would have been unbelievable. That's how talented he was, especially for Hibs playing in the Championship, dominating the ball and just being how clever he was. But I'm not so sure at the time in his life and the time that he joined the Hibbies, minus the day in May, he had the right frame of mind or he was in the right headspace to produce the goods. That's probably the only thing I can say. But got on really well with him. Like to think we had mutual respect. We having good careers as such, and spent a wee bit of time with him in hotels, obviously pre-match and etc. Kind of gravitated towards us. But when it come to kind of being last in and kind of first away, kind of Stokesy would certainly win that ticket. Like.
At least they gave us that extra 1% on the 21st of May. So at least he
That's the
showed it
thing.
once.
Listen, I say it in the biggest compliment. I mean, he's like, I played with some top players, and Stokesy was as good as any. And listen, you're not getting Stokesy at his best. You get that because the harsh reality is he wouldn't be at Hibs if he was playing at his brilliant best. So you could argue, sometimes written in the stars, that Stokesy on his way down, or maybe not having the brilliant attitude that he maybe had at different times. I didn't know. I never played with him when I was at Celtic or whatever. But scored loads of goals. Highly thought of when he obviously played at Celtic. Really successful. Football brain and technical ability, like so clever. I loved playing him. I loved when I was in his team, 5-a-side possession, perfect for me. But when it come to the kind of finer details and kind of being on time and turning up for training and that type of thing, then I would say Stokesy was the one that probably didn't matter what anyone said to him. He kind of done what he wanted.
The last one first, I'll just come on to it in a sec, but I just want to, I know Liam will bring us to a close in a second. I just want to, on behalf of Craig, who's not here anymore, and all of us, I just want to thank you so much, Kevin, for your time. It's obviously you're a busy guy. Got a lot
He's
going
not
on.
dead, by the way.
So, sometimes Craig does feel like he's dead. Thanks so much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. Good to sit down and have a proper conversation. And I know we've obviously way overran, but really appreciate it. Can't thank you enough. The last thing from me, Kevin, is what's next for you, I guess. You've obviously had a relatively successful spell at Kelty. Obviously it came to an end, unfortunately, with what happened. Do a lot of coaching in the academies and stuff like that, a lot of TV stuff. What's next for you? What are you wanting to achieve, and what does that look like?
Honestly, well, listen, thanks for having us on, and listen, as you can probably tell, I can waffle away. So, thanks for having me on, and hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully the people that listen will enjoy it as well. But what's next? I honestly, I get asked this question every time, even like when I'm at my academy every week. Parents, when you get a job, what's happening, what's next? And I'd like to think the people that come to the academy obviously appreciate what we do. They kind of buy our services as such. And as you mentioned, Kelty, but I always feel as though you kind of drive your own agenda when you're in these types of things. And when you're a player, you kind of get an opportunity to drive your own agenda. When you're a coach and a manager, unless you're in a job, you're not really getting an opportunity. It's a I'm not trying to be too clever, but it's like a different ball game, really. And I suppose I never envisioned when I left Kelty, or when we left Kelty, me and Geordie, that we would go come the summer, kind of 2 years without a job, really. So I frustrated, and disappointed, but at the same time, not getting the violin out, because listen, the academy is really good to us. I've been going 7 years come November. We're really busy. We've got great parents that support us. We've got loads of great kids, and I love taking them. It's a real passion of mine. I've obviously got my 2 boys at the Hibs. I feel like I'm just a dad to them. I try and support them, try and give them the best opportunity. And if another job come up, my wife knows and the kids know that I would. At one stage, I was doing 7 days a week, every week. At one stage, I was doing the media. I was full time at Rangers with the B team or the 18s when I first started. I had my own academy, so I was like juggling 3 jobs, and you could argue 2 of them were like full time jobs. So I was like, but I believed in doing the hard yards and doing the time, and I thought I would get the reward for it. You could argue I did when I then took the big plunge to go to Kelty, and I suppose off the back of that, a couple sniffs here or there, but just know the right opportunity and probably know the right person to believe in you, really, to give you that next chance. So a saturated industry that there isn't that many jobs for us young coaches, and unfortunately, it's just the way it is. You can't cry about it. I do get disappointed. Hopefully, probably you can see that, but I didn't lose any sleep over it. I've got a good life. I've worked hard for what I've got, and we continue to work hard at the academy. Do you know what I mean? Continue to be passionate. Continue to help the local kids in the local schools. Continue to try and give back, and if we can keep on doing that and people keep on appreciating it, then great. If they don't, then there'll come a time where I get a bit old and get a bit frustrated with it, and I'll probably stop. But while I'm fit and healthy and I've got a passion to try and help, we'll just continue to bash on, really.
And just on the Kelty bit as well, there was a bit when you were obviously flying with them that you were, not that there would have been anything in it because you would have been pursuing Kelty, but you were on the shortlist for the bookies anyway for a Hibs job that came up as well. And I know you've spoke at great lengths in the past about wanting to become a Hibs manager and maybe a Rangers manager, whatever. You want to get to the top and get as best as you can and go as far as you can. You just mentioned there just now about the right opportunities not came up, but your wife and your kids and your family know that if the right one does come up, what is the right one for you? What appeals to you in regards to a managerial job, or would you even go into the realms of just coaching or assistant and then can you go for there?
I just think something that gets you excited, and I don't even know what that looks like, but a club that's forward thinking, a club that believes in you, a club that picks up the phone and asks you. So every job I went to interview for, so when I went to meet Kelly when I was at Kelty, obviously Kelly phoned up, James Fowler, the sporting director at the time, phoned up Kelty, asked for permission to speak to us. I was away for a couple of nights in St Andrews. Obviously, you're part-time at Kelty, so you're not on a full-time contract. So you're only training on Tuesday, Thursday night. So in between Christmas and New Year, we normally go away for a couple of days up at St Andrews. So we're away. Got a phone call off of obviously Fow, missed call off of Kelty. Went down to meet them on New Year's Eve and had a good chat, and obviously never got the job. Like, never took one eye off of the job that we were doing at Kelty, and I say that through the bottom of my heart. Like, I gave up TV gigs for doing BT for Rangers European games, semi-final down in London, well paid, well looked after, but I gave it up because I thought it was right to be at Kelty, because it was the right thing to do. And listen, part-time players miss training regularly because it's not their job. When things pop up, it's the way it is, and there's no as big an onus as when you're a full-time player, like a Hibs player, that you cannot be going to weddings at the weekend. You cannot be going on stag do's in November. It just doesn't happen, but it does with part-time players. By the way, we were really lucky at Kelty. The boys were brilliant, but it still does happen. People do get married, people do go away, people do miss training, people do have to have parents' evening at night time with school teachers. But as a good manager, you accommodate people. So without waffling too much, like the Dundee United job come up, same again, asked to go and interview for it. The Rafe job come up, asked to go and interview for it. I was offered the Rafe job, obviously, before Nid got it. Never felt it was right for me at that right time. And without going into too much politics stuff, but obviously the club were going through that period with David Goodwillie, with the sponsors. I felt as though it was a wee bit of risk for me as an individual. And listen, I know Goody, didn't want to get involved in any public decision of what's right and what's wrong, because it's got nothing to do with me. But at that time, I just felt as though it wasn't right for us, and still fully committed to Kelty. But naturally, the relationship with Kelty was suffering probably the last 3 or 4 months. We felt it was right for both parties, the club and for us, to move on, and we did. I think people thought, the same as when they have an opinion on your football player from afar, that we had something lined up. or I had something lined up. Well, I don't want to pat on the back for it, because I wish I did have something lined up, but I never. I went, 18, 19, 20 months without a job, so I think that's, anyone would tell you the proof's in the pudding. I never had anything lined up. There was no underhand tactics. It was just a clean break, which was right for the club. We felt we took them as far as we could. They finished 8th under John Potter the previous season. They're still in League One now. They're obviously going all right. They've had a wee bit of a stumbling start. My brother-in-law's obviously went back there, who was my assistant. I watched for the results every week, desperate for them to do well. Tids was my captain. He's now the manager. Great community club, great people behind it, but the people that have moved to Wraith, the relationship had probably broke down with us, and it was becoming difficult, and it was becoming an unfair environment for both. So we just felt it was the best interest for everybody, not because we were too big for our boots or we had another job lined up. And maybe in hindsight, me giving up the Kelty wage, which I still had another year's contract, was stupid. Maybe I should have kept on taking my money and waited until I walked straight into another job, but I'd done what I've always done in my career. In my life, is trust my gut instinct and do what I think is best for all parties, really. And I've done what I've done, and listen, I maybe I've done it wrong. Maybe I should have stayed at Kelty. I maybe should have kept on taking the wage, and maybe I should have left to go straight into another job, and maybe I would be in a different position that I am now. But what do you do? If we all had hindsight, we would all be wonderful, wouldn't we?
This is it. But listen, Kev, I just wanted to say again, I know Sean just said it, but a massive thank you. It's a big chunk of your time that you've given up to talk to us tonight, and we really do appreciate it, and feel like we've had a right good chat about all things Hibs, all things football. So again, just a massive thanks.
No, pleasure, lads. Thanks for having me on, and I hope people. I'm just a normal lad for people, and hopefully you Hibbies can understand that it's hard for us players, because I'd love to be a fan like you. I wouldn't like to give up the career that I've had and the dreams that I've lived, but you just want to be appreciated, and people hopefully think you're all right and you're a good enough lad, and you mean well by most people. Do you know what I mean? And people that wish you well, you wish them it back, really.
Brilliant.
Of course. Yeah. Anything that you want to say, Ryan and Sean, before we finish up?
No, again, just a big thanks to Kev for his time. Really appreciate you coming on and accepting the invitation. Said a lot of valuable things that I'm sure a lot of people appreciate hearing. So thanks again, bud.
Aye, pleasure, lads. Listen, I hope it's good, and just give me a shout if you want me to put anything on social media or whatever. Just give us a shout, just drop us a message. But listen, enjoyed your time, and thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Take care. Stay safe, Kev.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, lads.
Thanks,
guys.
bye.
Let's get ready to rumble.